Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Hopefully we'll have some more people that are coming in after their lunch. We're going to go ahead and kick off. My name is Andrea Gold at University of Texas at Austin Center for Transportation Research. I wanted to start by just giving you some opening remarks and context about the Texas Innovation Alliance, its programming, and what we have in store for you all today. But first, we have our safety briefing.
Attention, please. The following is a safety briefing to help ensure your personal safety while attending a public meeting at the Texas Department of Transportation Stasny headquarters, Duro Canyon, Mustang Island, Lost Maples, Enchanted Rock, and Goliad meeting rooms. In case of a medical emergency, please call 911. An automated external defibrillator unit and first aid kits are marked and located in the main lobby at the security desk. Fire extinguishers are marked and located in the public meeting space. In the event of an evacuation, proceed to the visitor entrance and exit the building. Once outside, proceed to the south parking lot of the building, past the flagpole to visitor parking, and assemble at muster point 2. In case of tornado or inclement weather, stay inside, move away from exterior walls and windows. The designated shelters are interior hallways. In case of active shooter or bomb threat, follow instructions from the public address system and on-site security personnel for more details. Thank you for your time. Have a safe and productive meeting.
Okay, so just to talk through some of our meeting objectives for today. For this meeting and for all the programming that we have for the Texas Innovation Alliance, our objective is to advance the identification and the sharing of best practices and lessons learned with all types of different innovations that we identify from partnering with state agencies, local agencies, and regional agencies. At these in-person meetings, the format that we've been following is we typically identify a priority topic that we want to take a deep dive on. So for today, we're going to look at orbit meets asphalt and dive into the aerospace economy in Texas and talk about how to support growing those activities. And then another thing that we like to do at the meetings is we kind of take a look around the state at different agencies and we pick out different innovations that we can share just to make sure that we are continuing to get the word out and encouraging folks to collaborate with some of the peer agencies across the state to learn what they've done, learn how it can be scaled or implemented or replicated. And we have a number of ways that y'all can get engaged. I'm going to go through that in just a few moments. But really today, we just want to continue this discovery of innovation and continue the dialogue. Okay, hopefully it stays. All right, so on the agenda. So after some introductions and some opening remarks, we're going to hear from Federal Highways. We've got Ed Ofori, who is here, that's going to speak with us about the newly released Everyday Counts initiatives. We'll hear about some of those priority topics. Then we're going to have an update. If you were with us last time, from El Paso, we have the STIC funding winners who are advancing a project related to air quality monitoring around the ports of entry there. So we'll get an update with where they are in their project. And then we'll do the deep dive. We're going to have presentations from 3 different perspectives around the state, and our moderator will also provide a kind of a national perspective about what's happening in the aerospace economy and how Texas can position itself as a leader. So we'll have presentations, and then we're going to have moderated discussion where we want you all to engage, and we'll have opportunities for you to ask questions. And for those online, we'll also have an opportunity for you all to send in some questions if we can have time to get to them. After that, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll run through our innovation project showcase. So that is hearing from state, local, and regional folks on different initiatives that they have going on. And a quick opportunity for some discussion with that as well. And then we'll talk through some closing remarks and what's coming up next. We'll talk through the different programming events that we have coming up and some other announcements. And we are trying to be as paperless as possible. So I'm going to pause here for a moment. If you haven't already seen the agenda, or if you want a copy on your phone, please take a moment to scan the QR code. And so this will have a more detailed agenda with all the speakers and the topics, a little bit more fleshed out than what you saw on the previous slide. I'll wait till I see phones go down before moving on. All right, let's talk about ways to engage. So we've got a couple different ways. So the first one, please visit the Texas Innovation Alliance website. We have announcements there. We have all of our activities. So that is our monthly deep dives, our quarterly in-person meetings, and then announcements related to the Texas Innovation Invitational, which is our annual convening. Those are all posted there. You can find recaps of meetings and other information. The next one is a link to the distribution list. So if you want to get emails, I know that we have a monthly newsletter we send out and some other special announcements as events are coming up. Please give us your information. We'll make sure you're included. And then finally, we are always open to hearing feedback from y'all. So we like to know what different agencies are up to. We like to know what topics are important to you. So when we look forward in the calendar year at programming, we want to make sure we're selecting topics that resonate with y'all, and please give us feedback on that. We'll make sure and address it. And with that, that concludes my remarks. I'm going to hand it over to Erica Kemp from TxDOT. She's one of our partners and point persons in this initiative, and she's got some announcements to share as well.
Great. Thanks, Andy. So I just have a few things to share with you, and I hope, Director Onofre, that I'm not going to cover what you're covering, but I think it's really important that we share that USDOT published their strategic plan last week, and they're focusing on safety, infrastructure, innovation, and efficiency. And we're here to talk about innovation. So just to highlight underneath the innovation goal, their key priorities are going to be around reducing regulatory burden. We all love that, don't we? And enabling technology development and adoption, and then investing in transformative technologies. So if you have an opportunity to look at that document, I think it would be very helpful to see where the USDOT is headed. And so that's a big picture. With that, I'm going to draw you into, where we have innovation within the state. We often think about innovation as being the emerging technologies and the exciting, flashy innovations. But I'm going to highlight one from the Dallas district where they actually have a project to convert manual data entry they've been collecting on herbicide applications and put that into a GIS tool so that they can track it. And it may not be flashy, but it's really important to transportation, right, and creating a safe environment for our road users and maintaining our system. All right, my last update is a very exciting announcement. How many of you remember the WEJO data? I hope to see more hands than that. We now have the replacement to the WEJO data available. So we have streetlight connected vehicle data. It is available on our website. I think we were supposed to have a QR code. Was I supposed to press the button? All right, there we go. So you can get to this website through the QR code that's available. Again, it's the connected vehicle data. This is going to be anonymized raw data. So it is not something that a person like me would use. You're going to want to have a data scientist who can utilize this data. But it is available for you now. It is available to all transportation agencies within the state. There are consultants working on projects for them in research institutes that are also working on projects for the transportation agencies. With that, I am going to turn it over to Director Onofre.
Can I just see here? Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here once again. I think this is my second time running. But thank you for having us here this afternoon. So what I want to talk about very briefly is Everyday Counts initiative. For those who are not very familiar with that, this was since 2012 that Federal Highway championed these everyday counts. And what they are state-driven innovations that we think are underutilized, or we think that we can be a champion for adoption and implementation by other states. And so these are coming from state DOTs like TxDOT and others. And so since 2012, we've been championing those on a 2-year cycle. And so, these are all innovations that promote safety, improve mobility, and make our roadways safer. And so since then, every state has implemented some innovation of some sort that we've promoted. We've had at least 26 of the 61 being implemented by several states, and there's a state that has actually implemented 45 of those. I'm not sure if that's TxDOT, but pretty ambitious. So in the last few weeks, we've rolled out EDC 8. So we're in the 8th round of these everyday counts. And there are 6 innovations that we're championing in EDC 8. And I want to just very briefly go through those 6 innovations. The first is advancing nighttime work zone safety. I think we all are concerned about our workers in the field, building our roadways, bridges, and whatnot. And so we're championing this innovation to see how we can use technology and innovation to make these workers safer, to make the work zone safer. Several states implement different methodologies, but what we're trying to do is harmonize these and promote them so that they are consistent across the board versus being scattered from state to state. The second one is beyond bid build. We're looking at innovative project delivery methods. And this is looking at how we can offer flexible tools that bring in expertise and deliver the projects a little bit better than the traditional bid build that we've had for several years. The next one is Connected Corridors initiative. This is hoping that we can get states to work in a coordinated fashion, let's say along I-40, Texas, Oklahoma, and several different states, and how we can harmonize some of these implementations and have connected corridors across state lines. The next innovation is integrated digital project delivery. I had a discussion with TxDOT executive director a few months ago, and he talked about how TxDOT is actually a leader in this, and we're hoping that we can, promote some of those methods that are being used here in Texas, but also be able to get them adopted nationwide. The next one is subsurface utility engineering, SUE, as it's famously called. We know that utility costs are sometimes the main driver of project costs or construction costs. How can we get better at being able to, investigate what's beneath the surface and be able to move and relocate and do all those things before the construction work really begins. And then the last one is innovative infrastructure management. I think in the previous cycle, we championed the unmanned aerial systems, and we think that was very, very successful. And so we're looking to build on that success to promote that nationwide. So over the next few months, we're going to be talking about this a lot. What we expect, or what we're hoping we can get, is that we're going to champion these innovations nationwide. But we're going to have a webinar in the next few months to discuss into detail these innovations, and then hope we can get state practitioners to be on those webinars, ask questions, and try to get a better understanding of what we're trying to promote. So there'll be more details. This is very, very high level introductions that I'm giving. My office here in Texas, our coordinator is Kirk Fover, and he's always at these meetings for the most part. But we're hoping that if there are any needs that the TIA has or the Texas STIC has, he can be the launch point, the pinpoint, or the POC to bring any kind of technical assistance to help with deployment of some of those. I know that, for instance, when it comes to the subsurface utility engineering, I think TxDOT has already shown interest in being a champion for that nationwide. So we're looking forward to that. We're very excited about that, and more to come later. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And like I mentioned previously, we're going to be thinking about how we can start to incorporate some of these EDC topics into some of our future programming, and we'll be reaching out to the folks that are engaged with us in the Alliance activities to understand what initiatives they have in each of those areas. So next we're going to move on. We're going to have an update from Dr. Mayra Chavez from El Paso, working on a project related to air quality monitoring. And Mayra, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, good morning.
All right, and you can share screen?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay, are y'all able to see that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for having me again. I know last time I presented a longer version of our project for the STIC award, and today I'll just give a quick recap. So the background of our project is we have major air pollution in El Paso, and we suspect traffic to be a major contributor. And so far, we've collected 5 months of hourly PM 2.5 and NO2 data at the ports of entry, and we have multiple sites. And in our analysis, we're including analysis of the background stations, the CAM stations managed by TCQ, and we're incorporating those with traffic volume counts, wind speed, and wind direction. And the opportunity for this project is to be integrated into ITS decision making here in El Paso. Here we have a map showing our locations. We have 3 major ports of entries in this corridor, and we have sensors placed at the locations. This one is called Zaragoza Isleta, and this one has a commercial lane and a passenger lane, and we have sensors on both lanes. In downtown, we have 2 bridges close to each other, and we have sensors at those 2 bridges. But in this update, I'll just discuss the updates related to our Zaragoza Bridge, which is the one with commercial southbound lanes. So in our preliminary analysis, we have focused on the traffic pollution relationship, where we first align traffic pollution with time series of PM 2.5 so we can see the peak hour alignment. Then we want to do a weekday versus weekend pollution differences, and within that analysis, we are trying to incorporate a lag of the traffic to account for meteorological dispersions and accumulations of emissions. So I'll discuss the key findings with our next slide. But for example, for PM 2.5, for this period, we have compared the traffic lag volume counts to the concentration values for PM 2.5. And we can see that as we lag the traffic by 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, the correlation improves. And when we separate by weekday and weekend, we notice that for PM 2.5, there's a negative association with weekend traffic in this commercial lane. So, of course, there's less commercial traffic crossing the border. But the PM levels remain similar to the weekday levels. So that indicates that maybe there's another source for PM 2.5 at the bridges. Now, for NO2, we see a stronger positive correlation with our emissions of NO2 with the traffic lag 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. And even when we isolate by weekend data, we still observe that positive correlation. So throughout our analysis, we're going to keep separating these 2 temporal periods, looking at weekend, weekday to see those effects and find a stronger relationship between emissions and traffic. And then separate from that analysis, we will do a general temporal pattern analysis for 24 hours, monthly seasonal trends, And just our preliminary findings, I'll show in the next slide. We have by day of week, we can see values for PM 2.5 are lowest on our Sunday days, which is our day corresponding to the least amount of commercial traffic. And then we see a diurnal patterns for PM 2.5 and NO2 kind of matching each other with peaks in the mornings and in the evenings. And then we see a more spread out distribution of the traffic volumes at this commercial bridge. So with this long period of analysis, we can analyze days, seasonal effects, etc. And so that brings me to the future of the project. If we continue the maintenance and analysis for a 1-year period, this will allow us to have the long-term data that can help see yearly patterns. We can look at holiday datas. The year-over-year trend detection will be very useful, especially for any policy changes that are occurring here in El Paso, which is actually the case. One of our major bridges, commercial lanes, will be closed in the coming months. So this will help us assess how effective or detrimental that change will be to concentrations. If we have a longer period, we'll also be able to have a larger data set for forecast training, and then of course capture all the seasonal effects due to meteorology or any source effects that happen through vegetation or dust storms in El Paso. But that was a quick overview. Thank you for having us again, and hopefully we'll present more substantial updates again at our next meeting.
Thank you, Mayra. Thought I saw a hand. Maybe I imagined it. Okay. We will continue to check in with you. Thank you, Mayra, for being here. I know this is something that we're going to follow. Okay. And with that, we'll transition to our next segment. So we're going to have kind of a deep dive with a series of presentations to look at what we call orbit to asphalt, asphalt to orbit. I got it backwards. Looking at how transportation infrastructure, surface transportation infrastructure, and other resources can help to support the growing aerospace industry across Texas. Katie Turnbull, if you want to come up. So we've got some quick opening remarks and some context that Katie's going to share with some work that she's been doing looking at kind of across the country and in other states. And then we're going to do state, local, regional look, and then we'll have a moderated discussion where we encourage you all to chime in. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Katie Turnbull.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can, do I just hit the? So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to moderate this session and provide a few opening comments. Again, as always, outstanding job by CTR staff and TxDOT staff. I think this is a key, very important topic, and we've got a great lineup of speakers. So my job really to start it off is to set the stage a little bit nationally and internationally. You know, I think as you all know, the space industry is really taking off. Ha ha ha. It's a rapid growing segment of the U.S. economy. It's sort of often viewed as maybe a subset of the whole aerospace industry, but you know, in 2024 it accounted for close to $240 billion in revenue generation, and that's estimated to increase to about $60 billion by 2030. And when you look globally, that's about $1.8 trillion by 2030. And as you all know, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you were lucky if there was a space related launch once every couple years. Now they're happening daily almost, not only in the US, but throughout the country. So the whole, when you look at it, you know, there's sort of the technology market that is what everybody's building or doing, whether it's vehicles or space stations, whether it's the orbital launch, either horizontal or vertical. Certainly satellite services are a key element, as well as the communications, both deep space and linking into that. And it's also the industry side of it. So obviously everything from research development to manufacturing to testing and deploying to launching and landing, which we're going to hear more about from all of our speakers, to the supporting services and transport logistics, as well as space tourism, whether it's taking actually people up in space, which Caroline has already volunteered to be one of the next groups to move forward with, or those people that come to watch a launch, which also can generate a whole host of issues and opportunities. You know, obviously Texas is a leader, and that's why this session is very important, I think. When you look around the country, there are 10 states, you see them here on the slide, that are hosting FAA licensed activities. But you also see, and that's why I think it really sets Texas apart, those 4 purple diamonds in the state are the ones that aren't necessarily FAA approved, but are private sector initiatives that are moving forward. And you know what those are. The Boca Chicas, we'll hear about that. What's going on down in the Brownsville area. Obviously, McGregor is also a SpaceX that's not only doing a lot of the construction, but also doing some testing, launching, and landing. And then Blue Origin out in West Texas, that again is a private sector, as well as the Midland International Spaceport and the Houston Spaceport that are both FAA approved and are doing vertical launch and landing. So again, just sets the stage a little bit. Very important at the national level in terms of the economy, obviously, and you'll hear more from all the speakers, a key element of the Texas economy as well as the global economy. And as we'll hear, getting what's needed for those launches and landing to the right spots is a key element. So the whole link of asphalt, what's the supply chain, where are things coming from and going? Things actually get built in West Texas and end up in India. So we're not talking about a short trip here. We're talking about trips that involve multiple modes, multiple integrators and supply chains that can get very, very complex. So with that, as was mentioned, we have a lineup of 3 outstanding speakers. We'll hear from each of them, and then we'll have some preset questions, some moderated discussion, and then open it up for your thoughts, reactions, both online but also in the audience, because you may have some specific questions. So as was noted, we have Giovanna Rangel, who's the Senior Director for Space and Defense Affairs from the Brownsville Economic Development Council. We have Jose Ortiz, Deputy City Manager for the City of Midland, and then Caroline Mays, the Senior Director of Planning and Modal Programs from TxDOT. So with that, let me introduce Giovanna, and we'll pull up her PowerPoints.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. So my name is Giovanna Rangel, and I represent the Greater Brownsville EDC. It's an honor to be here representing the organization, and most exciting to be discussing this topic with everyone. I was just talking to Andrea yesterday. We had a quick call, and I told her, I said, I'm at the Space Symposium. I literally just landed this morning from Colorado Springs, where over 12,000 people attended, over 50 countries were there representing, and everyone was talking about space. They had amazing exhibits from Blue Origin to, just the local companies from Colorado Springs, and getting to connect with them and just listening to what's happening. It's honestly incredible. It's something that I probably can't even explain myself. What's happening in Brownsville is, it's amazing, right? I'm a Brownsville native. I was born and raised in Brownsville. I left to come to Austin actually for college. And I always said, I don't want to go back. I want to stay in Austin. I want to, grow my family here. At the time, I'm like, you know what, there's no opportunities. But 6 years ago, I decided to go back home. And at the time, you know, SpaceX had already done a couple launches. It's barely starting to kick off. And, you know, people were still not understanding what that meant for Brownsville and the impact it would have. And being part of this organization and then really being front and center and seeing that impact has been incredible. So just have a couple slides here. Want to share just a little bit on, you know, the moment Brownsville reimagined its future. So over 10 years ago, our current CEO, Gilberto Salinas, was actually in the initial conversations with Elon Musk, closing the deal and really, you know, finding that land that they needed. Fast forward to now, right? We have SpaceX, Starbase just a couple miles away, who currently has over 4,000 employees and are wanting to double that by the end of the year. So think about that, right? Not only do we have Starbase, we have Rio Grande LNG, who is also just invested over $20 billion in this project. They're currently trying to expand the project, apply for train 6, 7, and 8. And again, not only is Rio Grande LNG at the Port of Brownsville, we have a new Texas LNG who's also looking to, you know, be a part of this success. So just a little Brownsville at a glance. We have 1.4 million in population just as a Rio Grande Valley. We work very closely with our sister city in Matamoros. And so they in themselves have over 500 million people just living there. So we work very closely with them. A lot of the workforce, you know, comes and goes. Some of them live in Brownsville, some of them live in Matamoros, right? And we would not be able to do this without the Rio Grande Valley workforce. So SpaceX and LNG pride themselves in hiring local workforce. Rio Grande LNG has over 75% of local workforce, and to them, it's a 100-mile radius. So again, Brownsville is not able to do it by itself, which is why we collaborate very closely with other EDCs from San Benito, from Harlingen, McAllen, Edinburgh, you name it. We have a very young population. So 32 years old is the median age, and actually just a couple years ago, the number we had on our slides were 29. So that's changed a little bit, but very proud to have a young population, which just means that we have opportunity to train, to develop those skills, and, you know, make sure that we have the necessary training to be able to fill these roles that are coming up in the near future. Area developed, we're only at 50%, which means that, you know, we have a lot of land to be able to host new projects, you know, new, whether it's quality of life, whether it's new advanced manufacturing companies. We have a lot ahead of us in terms of growth. So we're very, very excited to be able to have that responsibility as an EDC and see what the future takes for that, you know, other 50%. I'm going to move forward. So Lean there was actually one of our biggest projects in the last year, which is SpaceX Supplier. It is a SpaceX supplier, I'm sorry. They came to us early November of last year. And within, you know, a month or so, we were able to get going with our permitting department, worked very closely with the city. This project in itself is, you know, again, we're very proud just because of the timeline of execution. SpaceX needed them to be there sooner than later. And we have an industrial park that we were able to, you know, make sure that we fit them in and expedited that permitting process to ensure that they were up and running at the beginning of this year. So again, you know, now they're looking to possibly expand. And so that is just one of the examples of that trickle effect that SpaceX has really had for our community in itself. Speaking of our Greater Brownsville Tech District, this is a new 738-acre industrial park that we have, which is right on our 511 corridor, connects to the Port of Brownsville, connects, straight to Starbase as well. And so we're looking to fill that park, whether it's with, again, SpaceX suppliers, or anyone really interested in coming to Brownsville. So part of what we do is we recruit. And we also take care of that local industry who's wanting to expand. So a lot of, the companies have had a major growth and impact positively because they itself are benefiting from SpaceX. And so a lot of them are wanting to grow and expand. And so this is what this is for. And, we're excited to partner up with the city as well. But we've donated 55 acres so that they can have their public safety complex there. And just a couple of things that, have come out in just the last year. We are the #1 leading metro location for in 2024. #2 lowest cost manufacturing location in the U.S. So very proud of that. We're #8 safest city in the U.S. in 2025, and #10 top U.S. metro people moving to in 2025. So just a little glance of what's happening in Brownsville, and excited to be here, part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next presentation. I think we're just going to do a quick computer switch while Jose is coming up. Next, we'll have Jose Ortiz from the Midland Deputy City Administrator giving us a quick presentation of some of the activities there. And I've got your...
Can everyone hear me? Okay, again, Jose Ortiz with the City of Midland. I'm the Deputy City Manager. For 10 years, though, I served as the Engineering Services Director. My background is I have a civil engineering degree from the University of Arizona, and my passion is transportation, so it's always fun to come down and talk to folks with TxDOT. But as you can imagine, aerospace and industry, this technology that we're entering is really exciting. And I'm by no chance the expert in Midland, but certainly have a strong interest in doing what I can to help facilitate the activity that's taking place in Midland. I hit the wrong button or this again. There we go. Okay, so a little bit about Midland. So obviously with oil and gas, that's really the bread and butter of our economy here in Midland, and that makes us the 5th largest economy in the state of Texas. We are rapidly growing like many other jurisdictions in Texas. We're all dealing with the growing pains throughout the entire state. I've been there coming up on, it'll be 15 years here soon. And in my time, the population there has grown by 30%. So that's a huge strain on our community because of the fact, just dealing with just the need for infrastructure to handle the new traffic and whatnot. But when you look at our economy, it is really, again, oil and gas is the prime and the bread and butter. We do have a strong interest in diversifying our economy, and an opportunity presented itself with technology being in the aerospace industry. Now, when they started talking about this probably about 12, 15 years ago, a lot of folks were just, why would Midland want to do something like that? There's really no future in that. And you fast forward to today and you just see it's come a long ways in that time frame. So it's really good that folks had that foresight back then to start putting things in place, because it's becoming more and more important. One of the unique things about Midland is because of oil and gas, we have on the average twice the number of engineers in the community because of the industry there. So that lends itself to maybe helping us out on our quest to move forward with aerospace, the aerospace industry. Now, a little bit about the spaceport. In 2014, we obtained the license from the FAA to become a spaceport. And that was a huge move in the correct direction to continue this quest. 12 years ago, it sounds like a long time ago, but at the end of the day, we're really in the early stages of this opportunity. But when you look at Midland and where it sits and some of the opportunities, we really feel that there's a really good chance that we'll really start to make a difference for the state and really the nation when it comes to aerospace. I should have noted one of the benefits of this one, it's a little different. Many other spaceports aren't co-located with their airports. This one is. So we were able to get that designation. And so we have commercial services out of the same airport. And this is an aerial of the airport. And you can see the terminal kind of on the north or the top right portion of the aerial. This portion has been redeveloped to be our spaceport business park. And so we have some new businesses that have come in and are starting to develop in this area. And so we have more space in this region for additional growth. The other thing the city had done a few years back is we actually acquired 347 acres of land for the purpose of just land banking. It's on the east side of the airport, but with the movement in aerospace, there's an opportunity for us to maybe master plan that and to actually enhance what we can do here to maximize that opportunity with aerospace as we move forward in Midland, Texas. One of the things that we've recognized, and I think, Katie, I think you had an image as well where it showed Midland and how it's oriented with these different spaceports. And we really kind of sit in the center. It's kind of a unique situation where the location we're at, if you look in either direction, you're about the same distance from the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, and the spaceports that you see all around us, we kind of fall in the hub, in the center of all this activity. So again, it lends itself opportunities for us to really be interconnected with a lot of these different spaceports. So it's an really a great geographic location that Midland sits in and allows us to have those spaceport to spaceport routes. Here I show we have 27 opportunities today, and I can only imagine it's going to continue to grow as the interest in aerospace continues to grow. So workforce and engineering talent. So again, that's going to be one of the things that is a challenge for us. We have that challenge today. Oil and gas, what happens is that we really don't have the educational facilities to educate our young talent coming in from the Midland Odessa area. So they have to go to Texas Tech, UT, Texas A&M, and the challenge we have is how do you get them back? So once your young talent leaves, they see the quality of place and again, I look outside and it's green. We don't typically see a lot of green trees here in Midland, Texas. So, that in itself is just a challenge. So having that ability to try to grow our needs in the city of Midland is going to be critical for us as we move forward. Again, the average is 20.4 engineers per 1,000 employees. So again, that's twice the average for the country. So when we talk about launching this opportunity with aerospace, we need that institution in Midland as well. So UTPB, which is University of Texas at the Permian Basin, they're introducing their aerospace engineering program there. Texas A&M also has a new academy that allows students to actually be A&M students, but they're there in Midland College. They do their undercourse work and eventually transfer over to the main campus for the last 2 years to seek their degrees and then hopefully again bring them back. But that also helps us to encourage students to pursue engineering because you have now opportunities in Midland, which you didn't have before. And that's important. That's the biggest challenge we have is, again, finding ways to educate and create the talent there in the Permian Basin. Now, having that ability, knowing that we have folks from the Chevrons and the Exxons that bring in engineers, there is an opportunity, though, for us to kind of share workforce talents. And I think we talked about it, early on. I think Katie mentioned it as well, is that there is a strong need for us to collaborate and to really think outside the box and be innovative in the way we actually interface and engage the talents throughout the state. Again, I go back to, we talk about this in Midland, but this really is a benefit for the entire state. So us working together at the state level, federal level, to help bring Midland to the next level is going to be important for the entire state economy. I think Brownsville's in the center of all that as well. They're a little bit ahead of us, and there's some great opportunities that have already taken off there, and we see the same opportunities in Midland as well. So right now, again, 12 years, really early stages of our existence when it comes to the spaceport industry, and we already have 11 different partners that have shown interest and are starting to move in that direction to be a part of what's happening in Midland. AST is probably one of the biggest ones. They have a headquarter there in Midland. They started here recently. I forget what date they started with Midland, but they already have over 200 employees in Midland, and they have an interest in growing even more. And what they do is they actually manufacture satellites and we can't launch in Midland just yet. So they have to take that through freight to other locations to actually launch them into orbit. So to date, they've put 7 satellites into orbit, and then they have another one coming up here this month. Again, we talk about Blue Origin and their existence, and again, the partnerships that you see here with these different entities. They should be launching another satellite here pretty soon in the next. It may have been done already. It says April of 2026 here. So again, quite a bit of activity. We also have starfighters. Starfighters, they're basically, they operate private fleets, F-104s, F-4 aircrafts, and they conduct research and development for commercial and defense industry, as well as pilot and space flight training. Now that's important too, because when you look at what's happening, space activity and the technology is not about sending astronauts into space. The previous slide showed the manufacturing of satellites. This shows the training and also will lead into security, national defense. That's an important component to all this. So there's so many different facets to aerospace that we're just starting to scratch the surface. And knowing that we have opportunities to grow this industry with the 340 some odd acres of land on the east side really lends itself to creating those partnerships on the private and public side, and even the different jurisdictions throughout Texas to work together to actually make this a reality. Midland is, again, just based on location, it allows us to really kind of enhance the need for national security. You can see the coast, you've got NASA in Houston, and you've got the activity with Blue Origin in West Texas, and even the activity in New Mexico. So again, because of the location, it allows us to really talk about diversifying the aerospace industry and look at all the various needs that are needed throughout the whole process. Now, when we say all this, the challenge you have, though, is that you still have a strong need with the infrastructure, because everything that happens in space starts on the ground. And so the challenge we have is that infrastructure is going to be important for us. We have I-20, but the challenge we have is that we have a lot of county roads, FM roads, that when you're delivering goods back and forth, whether you're providing supplies to, let's say, an AST to develop a satellite, we still have to transfer the satellite back out. We need infrastructure to make that happen. And so there is a strong push for I-27 that's going to go north and south. And so as we develop that interstate, that's going to be really beneficial, because now you can go east-west on I-20, north-south on I-27, and even the discussion of I-14, which would get us another area going towards, the southeast portion of the country. So all that has to happen to allow us to really maximize the opportunities we have in the state of Texas, and particularly in Midland. So once those things come together, really a lot of this starts to take off. So good news that we're in the early stages of developing the spaceport, but we do have our challenges. And so how do we work together in a collaborative effort to get the infrastructure in place to allow us to move freight back and forth and to develop our institutions the way we need them? So with that, completes my presentation.
Thank you very much. And I think where you left it is a good segue into our final presentation. So next we're going to have Caroline Mays, the Senior Director of Planning and Modal Programs from TxDOT, come up and speak to the Texas Space Industry Highway Transportation Needs Assessment. And then after that, we're going to bring all of our presenters back up for a moderated discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody. That is a little weak. You can't be sleeping during my presentation. I hope not. So good afternoon. Yeah, much better. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit hoarse. I just came back from Astro and it was intense. So all the talking. So I apologize for that. But Jose, thank you for teeing it up that everything that goes into space is transported on the ground. It touches the ground at some point, and then you guys think about from orbit to asphalt to orbit. It's really, really key that surface transportation, whether it's highways, rail, water, and others, transport this. But so what I'll talk about here, just to let you guys know that most of the space activity, from the manufacturing and the stuff that's transported, is primarily highways. Probably 98% is highways. other than maybe the softwares. They don't use rail, they don't use barge. They use barge when they get to the ports, but primarily everything is moving by highway. So just kind of for that context. So before I kind of begin my presentation, I'll tell you just a little bit of genesis behind this. The legislators, not this last session, but 2 sessions ago, created a Texas Space Commission. Okay, I'd heard about it, didn't really pay much attention. So September 2024, I'm in Laredo at a summit, and the executive director for the Space Commission, Norman Garza, that we're now like this, was on the stage, and he starts talking, and then he asks a question, and somebody points, oh, TxDOT, Caroline Mays is right there. When he got off the stage, he bolted straight to me and asked me a question I could not answer. He's like, Caroline, I'm getting a lot of questions from the big guys, the Blue Origin, SpaceX especially, to address corridor issues. It says, can you give me a number? How much would it cost to fix Highway 4? Or, have you guys identified space corridors in the state of Texas? I'm like, no, Norman, when do you need it? It says, before light session. This is September, middle of September. Needless to say, what you see here took about 90 days. From probably, think about it, this is TxDOT. Most of you here are TxDOT. You come back, you tell your team that I need this done. Is there a work authorization that can do this? And then the consultants have to develop the scope, etc. So I had people working during Christmas holidays, including myself, because they were texting me like, Caroline, Christmas Eve, can you get on a Teams call? I'm like, sure, because this is mission critical. So needless to say, we get this done, share with Norman, and the rest is history. TxDOT is in the business of addressing space and space activities in the state of Texas. So what I'll kind of run through this quickly so you can see what we did. And this is looking just on the highway piece of transportation needs for the space industry in Texas. I think it was touched already. We are the only state with space activity all over the state. Florida is in one place. Ours is everywhere, touches every corridor, touches every part of the state. So as you can see here, we've had a long history of space activity in Texas, 60 plus years. Most of you know, Johnson Space Center in Houston. We've had that for a long time. And Katie already kind of mentioned some of this. I mentioned the Space Commission that was created in 2023. And that has been driving a lot of what we are reacting to. But I think we're getting a little bit more proactive now. So the needs assessment focused on really kind of 4 key areas. One was what corridors do the space industry activities, what do they use, to where they're manufacturing the stuff and where they're actually building and where they're launching it, because there's several things going on within all of that. And then the thing is, do the current planned highway infrastructure accommodate them? You see some of the pictures, gigantic things moving on. SpaceX, for instance, a lot of the steel comes to the port of Brownsville that then is trucked into SpaceX. All of those rockets you see is steel. It's steel. So very heavy material. And then what are some of the critical highway characteristics? The bridges, the pavement, you name it, potholes. I never thought potholes would be a big deal, but when they're saying we're moving a rocket that's very expensive, but it's very sensitive, potholes is a big deal. Geometric design issues, all of those we heard. So we looked at what our current corridors look like, and then what investments are we already making today as TxDOT, but also that we can make moving forward to address those specific issues. So that was kind of the genesis of that. Extensive process. You would be surprised within 90 days how much engagement was done. You got to get good consultants. I'm just telling you. The engagement that was done, but also in collaboration with the Space Commission. They had the network of all the space industry, so they were very instrumental in getting us in front of, we talked to SpaceX, Firefly, and many others. As you see here, a survey was sent out. They filled out the surveys. We were able to get a lot of data, a lot of information from them. But then also we engaged a lot of folks other than just the space industry, TxDOT, some of the cities where all of the space activities is going on. So it was really extensive. I'm telling you, I've never seen some folks work so hard. I've been here and I stretched a lot of people. This one was a stretch assignment for many people. So some of the input we got, we're just summarizing this, is, roadway access improvements. Firefly, the whole thing was, we're coming on an FM roadway, we're trying to turn on US 183, the geometric design, the stop sign, we have to get somewhere to come stop, trying to get on 183. So we heard a lot of those things. And then roadway capacity. Again, A lot of issues there. SpaceX, Giovanna, Highway 4, big issue. Two-lane roadway, and we got challenges there, but help is on the way. Okay, that's all I can tell you. Operational and safety improvements, a huge issue there. Other things we heard was at-grade road crossings. If they're crossing a U.S. highway or a state highway, chances are some of those have at-grade road crossing, hump crossings, a big deal for a lot of those components as well. And then really making sure that the investments we're making moving forward actually addresses those needs. Again, this is some of the things we heard, and I won't really go through all of them, but one that was kind of interesting was the need for alternate routes. Okay, when we think they're all going to move on the interstate system or 4-lane divided roadway, but what if something happens on that? So they really, identified that geometric design. I cannot even start telling you how much we heard, and I still hear that till today. They see me, they're like, Caroline, what's up with the bridges on these corridors and geometric design, turning radii issues? They know all of that because they're moving those components. And then oversized overweight, truck parking. A lot of that we heard. We do a lot of that at TxDOT, but they're not necessarily in these corridors that were identified, throughout the network. And then some of the programmatic things that they brought up. One that I think we did not really cover as TxDOT is the permitting. They talked about how long it takes to get permitting, and that's not us. That's DMV, that does the permitting for the oversized overweight corridors. So really needing that. But also they talked about communication, because this was the first time we as TxDOT were really going to the industry, to the space industry. So really they emphasized the need for collaboration, communication, throughout, and really engaging with them. We're doing a much better job. Like I said, Norman and I are kind of lockstep. I was at SpaceX 4 times last year, different occasions, different times. So we're going to continue to definitely do that. And then, this just walks you through kind of the steps we use to identify the corridors. Because one, we have to identify the corridors, identify what the challenges, issues are, and then identify what investments we're already making today and what investments we need to make earlier and make later. So as I mentioned, first was identifying, the corridors. We overlay down, show some of that information, and then mapping stakeholder input, and then analyzing really what this means for the space industry, and then validate the data and synthesize it, and then be able to come up with the corridors. So what you see here on this map of the 8,500, roadway miles was really, after we did a lot of analysis, identified that this is some of the most strategic corridors of where they're moving. And again, this connects the supplies, the manufacturing, and the launch facilities. So this is not just the launch facilities. So with that, we identified 8,500, and then really we identified 98. Somebody, can you mute?
Like what? Right here? No.
Can you mute? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we identified the critical corridors because, again, we were looking for actionable, pair of corridors that we can, provide to the Space Commission and, to go seek what they needed. And so when you look here, this maps kind of the layers with rigor that was taken to really look at all the different elements, kind of overlay all of this so we can really start telling the story of what the different needs are. Like I mentioned earlier, bridge vertical clearance was a huge deal. And then pavement conditions was a huge deal because a lot of these components are big and they're tall. And then the width of the highway, like I said, the highway 4, if you drive there, it is very narrow, there are no shoulders. If something happens, they can't really pull over. It's mashed land. So a lot of that came up during those discussions. And this here just summarizes it. Again, you guys will get this presentation. I'm trying to cover it quickly. This was kind of the summary of some of the key programmatic needs. I already mentioned a lot of this, but then the critical hubs and corridors, as you can see, we covered everybody in being able to identify and understand what their needs were as we did this. Of course, everything comes to dollars and cents. So after we did all this, the team went and put what the needs are, what they're asking for, and what would it cost, because I was the assignment. Norman asked me, Caroline, what would it cost to address the needs? We identified the needs, now the dollars and cents. So you see here, staggering $27 billion. If we were to go and address all the needs that are identified in those corridors that I showed you, not just the 98 miles, but the entire network that support the space industry in Texas, this is the staggering need. But what we had to do was, okay, what's chewable, bite size. So 1 to 5, which is mostly what we do here at TxDOT, looking at short term, medium term, and long term. What would that look like? We landed at $700 million if we're going to look at the short term, and that would address all the needs on the critical, the 98 miles or so that I mentioned earlier. So that would be what would address that. But then when you look at long term, definitely there's staggering needs. And this was really very, very important because I don't know if you guys followed the last late session. There was a proposal for $130 million to go and address Highway 4. Well, we got handed that ledge requirement, but it wasn't funded. So TxDOT Commission had to figure out how to fund that corridor. So it's in the works now. And like I said, help is coming there, but we continue to work on a lot of these other corridors within that. Then kind of, closing here is you look at future space activity, and one of my staff, I have several folks that this is their passion within TxDOT. You never know what people are passionate about till you kind of get them involved. Oh yeah, I have people here that they know everything about. We went to SpaceX and they wanted to tell the SpaceX people what they need, not really what they wanted to hear from them. But when you look at the activities, just look at the truckloads that it would take and to do some of these launches, and it's staggering. So as was mentioned earlier, there used to be one, or twice a year. SpaceX is talking about 100 in a year, 100 launches. If you go to SpaceX, they have rocket hotels. They're stacked up in a line. The things are long, and they're building it at a pace that it's mind-boggling. So they're looking at almost 100 a year that they will launch. So you just think about all of the truck traffic that's going to be able to support that. From a TxDOT perspective, we really looked at, okay, so how do we move forward in addressing this? It has to be programmatic that we within TxDOT can really ensure that we're addressing a unique industry need like we do with the seaports. The seaports, we don't necessarily do a lot inside the gates, but we look at the connectivity to those. So this is kind of some of the things we've looked at within the short, medium, and certainly, long term is, looking at how do we scale or mobilize within the districts, the division, but statewide, and then how do we really optimize our organizational framework to be able to address this. And Katie has been working with me on kind of framing that. She's looked at benchmarking. Florida is probably the best one. FDOT has an Office of Space within the DOT, and they have it staffed. They have it's a division equivalent of TxDOT. So looking at how do we scale, how do we sell that within this agency, because this is not going away. This is the governor's, one of the biggest governor's emphasis area, space and space economy. How can we grow that? And then finally, why does it matter to Texas? And again, I mentioned this already, that we've had this for a long time. Jose mentioned, and Giovanna mentioned, there's so much money, there's so much excitement. I've never seen so much excitement in anything like this one. You go to any space activity. I was last weekend, I was in Dallas. It was primarily military. They're talking about Space Force. They're talking about the future wars are going to be won by who can go to space faster, can innovate, can, have all of those things done. So when you look at it, we're positioned to do that as Texas. But how do we support them? Our role in transportation is make sure we can provide the transportation system that supports anybody that wants, to have space activity. And then, like I mentioned, our governor, he said, those who reach the stars will do so from the great state of Texas. Sign me in. I'm going there. So thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, Caroline. If we could have each of the presenters, and we've got our moderator coming up, we're going to get into a moderator discussion portion. We have a microphone for each of y'all, so let's make sure to hand you one as you come up.
So please come on up, Caroline, Jose, and join me. Why don't we start off with a question that you all mentioned, and that relates to sort of relationships and interactions. As we all know, relationships are really a key to almost everything. So maybe talk a little bit to start with how you, and you all mentioned it, you establish those relationships. Let's start with industry, sort of the private sector, how you establish them, and then how you continue to make sure that they are robust relationships, and maybe start with just going down the line.
Sure. So can you hear me? Okay. So in our office, obviously, there was a dedicated person just specifically for SpaceX, right? And in that case, it's myself. I'm no expert in space, in defense, but I'm truly taking the steps to really learn about this industry. And part of that is creating that relationship with SpaceX, right? Having that direct line with them and being able to pick up the phone and say, what do you need, right? And so we've been able to do that successfully. In the past year or so, our relationship with them has absolutely increased to the point where, you know, we're working with them in terms of workforce needs, not only, you know, training and funding and things like that, but just knowing, you know, what the impact that they will have in just the next 6 months. They're investing money in quality of life projects, and so that's also very important for the community to know, right? A lot of the things that they work on is we don't know until a year later, right? Because the communication sometimes is not there. And so thankfully, we've been able to get on their agenda and say, hey, we're here to help. We're here to be a part of the impact that you're having in our workforce, in our community. 90% of the people that work there live in Brownsville or drive through Brownsville, you know, eat, live. So, you know, we have to partner up together, not only for our workforce, but for what the future holds.
Yeah, and for us it's similar. I think, as I mentioned earlier, 2-3 years ago, we were not engaging at the level we are now. So the game has kind of changed. So our engagement is kind of multiple fold. One, the Texas Space Commission, I probably talk to Norman every week about something, including 2 weeks ago. I had to sub for him as a keynote at our aviation conference because he was at Adamus 2 launch with his board chair. So that's kind of the level of some of the engagement we're doing. City of Brownsville, lockstep with them, Midland, and many others. And SpaceX, of course, that's kind of priority number one because of the corridor. So the district, the TxDOT district in FAR, literally has conversations every week with SpaceX on the, you know, on the US 4 highway, State Highway 4, on everything from SpaceX is doing the design for the highway. We are in lockstep with them. There's a lot of environmental issues that need federal approval, so they're working with us on trying to expedite all of those things. And then Firefly, I was actually, again, last week with the CEO of Firefly, met and was able to talk to him, and I was kind of surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, he knows about the transportation issues for Firefly. It's like, yeah, that's kind of our biggest issues. So I think what we're doing is engaging everybody at the broader sense, but it's moving so fast. Like I mentioned, the military piece, I heard about it, but now it's moving so fast. It's like we also have to engage, yes, the space, but also the aerospace, the Lockheed and all of these other agencies and entities that are now really in the space business, although it's not necessarily like the SpaceX and Firefly and others. So yeah, we're doing that as TxDOT. Like we've always done, is a kind of multiple layers of engagement and really collaborating with so many different folks in this area.
And I'll answer a little bit differently, really more on the side of city government. We have an EDC or Economic Development Coordinator or a chairperson, Sarah Harris. She does a fantastic job, very similar to what Jovan is doing. And then our role is take the information from them, and then what can we do to enhance the airport to allow for us to have a level of attraction to these different groups that want to come here to Texas. We're not just competing with local competitors here. These folks are talking to California, Oklahoma, Florida. So how do we entice them to come to West Texas or just the state of Texas altogether? And so the collaboration is how do we help our EDC, but then how do we also work with TxDOT? So we fall kind of in the middle. We need a master plan, our airport, that's enticing the industry to come look at Midland. But then we also have to have the infrastructure in place to make it practical, because that's just one piece of the whole puzzle. We can certainly entice folks to be at the airport, but how do you get them back and forth from point A to point B? And so that's that elaborate collaboration that you have an assembly line of experts that really work in different phases, but when it's all said and done, we're all working together, collaborating and not working in silos to make this successful.
So maybe build on you talked about the industry side and you started it, Jose, so maybe we'll start back with you. The relationships with the other local organizations or state organizations from maybe just a public sector side. I mean, how do you make sure the oversized overweight permits, that topic is addressed or others? So how do you work with both your local partners, MPOs, others in the area, as well as across the state and even at the federal level?
And that's a great question. And so obviously one of the biggest challenges is that when you have different jurisdictions, and again, just Midland, Odessa, you would think that it's a small community, but it's not. You have Midland, you have Odessa, you have Midland County, Ector County. And so you have all these different facets, and all of us have a different interest in certain things that we really need to be looking through the same lens on how do we work together so we can come together with the state to come up with a action plan that we can actually achieve, and then work with our NDC and then advertise ourselves in a manner that we have a unified front. And so that's been one of the biggest challenges for us, but I think we've navigated that in recent years where we're all coming together with the same visions. That way we can basically advertise that vision to the folks that we can recruit to bring them to West Texas.
Yeah, I think again, the goal is this. There's the one voice, but TxDOT, I kind of say we're the octopus because we're getting everybody, from all angles, whether it's the district, the El Paso district, highway issues connecting to Blue Origin, or here McGregor, or so we're kind of the octopus of everything because, like I mentioned earlier, all of this is moving by highways. But some of the highway needs are not TxDOT. So we have to collaborate with everybody. But the challenge, Katie, is that we don't have dedicated funding for this. So they have to compete like everything else. And then also the timelines of a lot of the project, because some of it is like, oh, you're going to build it tomorrow. We're like, no, one, we don't even have funding. And two, even if we had the funding, this is how long it's going to take. So really also part of it is engaging, but also educating the industry, because this is the first time they're really coming to us and asking for this investments. So it's a lot of educating, but also working together. Some of them are very good partners. Like I mentioned, SpaceX, a very, very good partner with us. So how can we help them help themselves, or how can they help us help them? So kind of that's what the relationship really is with on the industry side. But then the public sector side, like I mentioned earlier, we already have kind of a framework that we work with to communicate and partner with our public sector partners throughout the state. So I think really using that infrastructure and that architecture to now infuse this new topic and say, how can we work better together to address the needs?
And to that point, I'd say for us as an EDC, we are working on our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And collaboration is key with our industry partners, with our educational partners, to bring them to the table. And we have successfully done that in the past 6 months, where we've convened and just really, had real discussions as to what are the needs for the next 5 years? What should we be focusing on to ensure that, what we're doing is aligning with the growth, with what, the industries that are coming into Brownsville are impacting. So I think it's crucial to really make sure that we have that collaboration For us, it's not only our EDC, but it's our Port of Brownsville, it's Cameron County, I mean, the Rio Grande Valley. We have to work together to even, be able to be successful to these projects. Because just like SpaceX, there's a lot more projects that are going to be life-changing for our city. And knowing that really, it can be scary at times, but for us, it's just taking those right steps forward and communicating, making sure that we're communicating with the right partners. That's key.
So as you look to the future, what do you see for the state of, especially the state, as you said, the state is going to be the focus. The biggest maybe opportunities and or challenge. Start with a challenge maybe and an opportunity. What could the state or should the state or the feds help the state do to help move things forward?
Well, I think really the biggest challenge is that this is growing so fast at the pace that we have not seen, because this is being run by the private sector. This is not the federal government doing Johnson Center. This is the private sector. And there's so many startups here. There's so much money being infused. So that's one. The rate and the acceleration is trying to keep up with it. Like you go somewhere and you find out there's this other new company now that has relocated to Texas and they're relocating here. So us being able as TxDOT to really be able to be in lockstep with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, with the Texas Space Commission, but also with the communities, because sometimes some of this, companies are going straight to Brownsville, they're going straight to Midland, they're bypassing the state level. So really being in lockstep with that is going to be one of the biggest challenges to keep, to keep with it. But I think the opportunity here is Texas, we've always led. And I think this is one area that everybody's going to look to us, because ours looks different. We have both public, but private is the biggest part of our space, program in the United States, probably in the world. Nobody around the world has similar where you have all of this, really the big guns that are doing this. So that's the biggest opportunity we have, to be able to leverage that momentum and leverage, kind of this concentration of space activity in Texas. And I didn't even talk military yet. Military, they're doing the same thing. So, from the Air Force in San Antonio to, Killeen Temple, all of them, and Fort Worth. So there's so much momentum, and I think there's opportunity, but I think probably our biggest challenge is going to be how we continue to engage them, and what would our role be in facilitating the transportation needs and really being able to understand those needs and react quicker than we've done in the past. Okay? We really need to react quicker than we've done in the past, and I don't know what that looks like. It's both the opportunity, but it's also one of our biggest challenge as TxDOT or as a state.
So I think it's really not waiting for those companies to come, right? It's being that proactiveness. We are moving so fast that, we don't really know what the needs will be in the next year or so. With just SpaceX alone doubling their workforce to 8,000 people, that's 8,000 people commuting to and from SpaceX to Brownsville, not including these, 18-wheeler trucks that are coming by from the port, from Brownsville. And so I think TxDOT is doing an amazing job taking these steps and doing this research and providing the information to us so that we can be advocates for you. We have a new government relations person in our team who is going to be very active at the Capitol. And I think, pushing the right legislative bills will absolutely be key in pushing the needle and moving the needle when it comes to this.
So there's multiple challenges, and I think obviously the infrastructure is the challenge we talk about today. And what does that look like? What do we need to serve this industry in these different locations throughout the state of Texas? But the other thing, because it's moving so fast, it's like going to a buffet and there's so many options that you're like, okay, where do we even start? So we've got to be more strategical in the way we manage this, because it is being managed or run by private industry. And we as the public are ready to receive it, but what are we receiving? And so our challenge is we need to try to be more macro versus micro. And I think a lot of times these micros distract us from what's the big picture and what is our ultimate goal. That's why we go back to the need for master planning our airports. That way we can be more strategic on how we receive folks. And it's such a diverse industry. Again, you touched on it, national security and the military. How do we complement them? How do we help them? And at the end of the day, it's really why we have our interstate system. It was based on national defense. So how do we embrace that now in space, and how does that all come together? We don't have the answers, but the answer that I can come up with is it is a challenge that we have to look at and be more strategical and have an actual plan that we can implement over time. And everything is at the ground level really taken off so quickly that I think that's our biggest challenge is how do we say, at least in parallel, instead of being reactive, let's try to be proactive so that we can actually embrace this and maximize those opportunities.
Yeah, if I can just add, Giovanna reminded me about the workforce issue. So when we went to do this needs assessment, we were focusing more on the supply chain, how all this moving, what are the needs, et cetera. But one of the other things we heard was workforce access to all of the space jobs. That was, again, yeah, we were kind of blown away by that because that wasn't the mission, but that's all we heard a lot. That, yeah, we have all of these jobs, but there's no public transportation to any of these facilities. How are the workforce going to get there? These are people that need to get to those jobs. So that's a limiting factor that we heard a lot. So we need to really think about that. That's a big challenge because a lot of where these activities are located, none of them are in Austin or San Antonio or Dallas where there's public transportation. So that forces people to drive, or in some cases, some of the companies are actually subsidizing some Jitsi service to bring their workers into these very high paying jobs. If you work at SpaceX and you're welding, $5,000 a week, that's a 6-figure salary. Yes. Yeah. Michaela, yes. $5,000 a week is a SpaceX welder. So how do we facilitate that? That's a huge challenge that we really need to kind of figure that out collectively.
So maybe to build on that, actually, that was a great lead in. Workforce development was mentioned by all of you. Maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you see the challenges and again, opportunities. I think you all touched on some opportunities, and obviously Texas is also noted for its great universities, its great, junior colleges, technical schools. What's needed to help maximize that and keep that momentum going?
So absolutely. Workforce is a prime topic right now. In our area, I don't think that we've ever seen the numbers on welders, to be specific, engineers as well. You'd think that they're looking for aerospace engineers, and they're actually not, right? The amount of aerospace engineers that they need is lower than the amount of electrical, mechanical, technicians, right? And thankfully, we have our local colleges. We have TSTC, we have Texas Southmost College, we have new welding institutions that are really being built from the ground up, that are being supported by our sister organization with small business grants, right, to push these programs forward. Pipe fitters, I can't even tell you the amount of pipe fitters that have been requested. And through high demand job training grants and working with Texas Workforce Commission, our local workforce solutions as well, we've been able to match $150,000 just in the past year to be able to train our community in pipe fitting and welding and diesel mechanic, CDL drivers, A and B. I mean, the needs continue, right? But we've been very blessed to bring together these different educational partners together and really talk about, what's happening. Not only are we in need of a really robust engineering program for Brownsville as UTRGV, we have a campus in Edinburgh and one in Brownsville. So we do have a need to push more of the engineering school in the Brownsville area, just because the community at the end of the day, it's an hour away, right? So absolutely, we're looking for partnerships for engineering and welders as well.
Yeah, it's in echo everything that you just said, because we have the same challenges in Midland, and it's been that way for a long time. Oil and gas has really driven where the workforce is going, so it's actually hurt us in other industries there in Midland 10 years ago, and so we're finally getting caught up. But as we enter into this new phase of aerospace engineering, we're going to have the same situations. Okay, how do we train these young candidates that can help out with the welding and technicians that do pipe work? We're lucky we have a lot of that in Midland. But at the end of the day, it's a competing interest. So how do you work with oil and gas to take the same expertise they have in their industry that can actually complement aerospace and bring them together so you have this level of job sharing opportunities? We don't really deal with booms and busts like we used to. That was an old saying in the Permian Basin is, okay, you can have a major boom, but then you can have a major bust. Well, that hasn't happened really. But there are times where the economy does get soft, and so you do have layoffs. And that it just seems to be that opportunity. Well, okay, don't leave the Permian Basin. You can now come over to the space industry and start to do work there too. So there is a challenge there for us. So how do we make that and bridge that and build those opportunities over the next so many years to allow us that opportunity to make sure that, you know, who we have in Midland and Odessa, we don't lose them. They can stay and actually keep, you know, enhancing the space industry as well.
Yeah, and Katie, to add, I agree with both of them on the trade skills. Really, that is a huge piece that is missing. But also the other one that has come up a lot, and like I mentioned, over the weekend with the military, is technology. Okay, AI and software developers and software engineers. Because when you think about space or aerospace, you cannot send it to space without all of the software engineers and the AI. So that's a huge skill gap that has been identified and continues to be one of the biggest challenges. It's like, okay, how are we going to scale not just Texas, but as the United States in that space of technology and AI? They were talking about drones, that part of the challenges in the U.S. Oh, we are so regulatory based, so standard based. It has to be perfect. The other countries, guess what? They're mass producing drones, and they're testing it in the field. So they're not waiting till the cake is baked completely before they go do that. So how do we scale, I think, on the technological piece to support all of that? Because, yeah, we can have all the welders, we can have all of those folks. If they build it, somebody has to do all of the software and the engineering and the AI behind it for it to go into space. So a big part of that, how you get all the young people today to really be interested in something in this area, in this field, is a huge challenge moving forward.
So let me ask just if there are any questions from the audience or any questions online at this point. And I've got some additional ones, but certainly want to give a chance for people if there are questions. Were there any on, or have there? Okay. Yeah. Here, start with you.
Thank you. I think my question, I'm Cameron Walker. I live in the Midland area. I manage the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I've been part of this program for some time. Glad to be back to listen in today. I think the question is for Giovanna, and I'll direct it immediately to you, but it may involve others. What are you doing to help with workforce housing and workforce development, in addition to developing tracts of land that are going to be useful for the purpose you've stated? But what are the background things with other entities are you doing to push that along?
So I will first start by sharing what SpaceX is doing. They are developing a lot of the housing in a Starbase to where, they're going to allow a lot more of their employees to live on site. For the city of Brownsville, we currently have over, I would say, 5,000 units of homes in terms of permits that are going to be built. Lots of new housing development that is being constructed as we speak. And so we do see the need in the housing and of course the workforce, not only from SpaceX, right, but from other industries that we're seeing coming into Brownsville. LNG, the Rio Grande LNG is also peaking at 7,000 to 8,000 construction workers, right? And so a lot of them are looking for temporary housing, but they're also looking to stay and live here for those permanent jobs, those 400 to 500 permanent jobs that are going to be for the next 10 to 20 years, right? So we're working closely with the City of Bronzeville and the housing communities to develop and identify those areas that are in need of these housing. So from different angles, from SpaceX tackling from that area and the City of Bronzeville approving these permits for construction, we're trying to do our best to move the housing forward.
Good afternoon. Raj Basavaraja with Transit Engineers and Planners. Of course, you never pass an opportunity to ask a question if Caroline Mays is in.
That's Raj, I know that.
No, seriously, this is a great panel. Thank you all so much. Looks like you're ready for Artemis 3 because they're looking for astronauts, all four of you right there. But anyway, seriously, great topic. So the question maybe more for Caroline. Great job on the assessment needs, right, for the corridors and the primary, critical primary and secondary, right? Two-part question. One, what are you all thinking about in terms of funding gaps over the next 5 years for those priorities on those three? And the other kind of more loaded question, I know when it comes to the freight needs, there's the rest of the state, and then there's this conversation where we truly try to balance the needs of the overweight and over-spaced freight that relates to the space companies versus what is it that the communities need that you all were talking about for Bronzeville. So, and it's a little bit of a loaded question on both parts, but if you can, please.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, to the first part is, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have dedicated funding for the space corridors. The freight, we have dedicated federal funds for projects that are on the freight corridor, which in a lot of cases, some of those corridors are the same with the space corridors as well as the freight network. So there's a little bit of synergies right there, although it's not direct, because today when we look at projects, we're like, okay, is it on a freight corridor? So guess what? Is this project on a space corridor? So that is one of the things that we do when we're looking at project prioritization, looking at really does that project rise up higher than its counterparts. So that's kind of how we're looking at that. But to your next question is kind of really long term. We're looking at how do we start chipping this away on addressing those, like I mentioned, the critical one. That was the subject of the lead session. That's really Highway 4. That was a critical one that we needed to address. But moving forward, there's still a lot of needs, like I mentioned. I can't even remember how many bridges that were identified on the space corridors that the vertical clearance, some of them are lower than our current standards. If it's on the freight network, it has to be 18.5. But some of the bridges are way lower than that, including some right here in Austin. But we're going to be fixing that. So we're going to be looking at some of those and working with the districts. Can you address this? If it's a low clearance bridge, that's an old bridge, all of those, maybe helps make that bubble to the top. And then, like I mentioned, just programmatic things. Some of these corridors we're already working on. It may be just be a matter of when that project will come into line to be able to widen it. For instance, US 5969, we're improving that to interstate standards, but it's going to take time to be able to address that, because if you see a lot of the SpaceX activities coming through that corridor, and many of the other corridors that we have. So I think it's just kind of building this like we did with the other programs. Because like I mentioned, right now we look at connectivity needs when it's coming to Port of Houston. They talk to us all the time, 255, 146. So kind of a similar, we're using that same playbook to be able to engage and to be able to address this. This is a longer game. This is not a short game. This is going to be a longer game. It's going to be part of our DNA moving forward. We're not going to ignore this. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, Raj.
Any other questions from the audience or anything online?
There was one question online that asked about community impacts. I think, Cameron, this touches a bit on yours about housing, but then Giovanna, I heard you mention some of the SpaceX quality of life investments that just kind of happen under the radar. Could y'all speak a bit more about how you're considering community impacts with this new industry and related growth?
Absolutely. So SpaceX just started an initiative where they share quarterly updates as to what they're doing with the community. And in this past, first quarter, they talked about the partnership that they have with the Turtle Sink in South Padre Island. So they were able to provide a Cybertruck so that they're able to, patrol better and have more accessibility to the beaches out in South Padre Island for the turtle lives. And so aside from that, they've also invested in Texas Beach Access 5. They are working very, very closely with Cameron County with funding to be able to beautify that area and make it a lot better. Not to mention, the cleanup beaches that they host every so often to ensure that, Boca Chica in itself is as clean as possible.
And if I can just add quickly on the SpaceX, the beach is actually public. You literally drive next to, in front of SpaceX, and you could go on the beach because that has been maintained as public. And then some of the things SpaceX is doing in Boca Chica, they have some of the best walking trails. And the bike, like if you go there, you see SpaceX people riding scooters, they're riding bikes, because the whole complex is very well connected and the amenities are excellent, but that's just within the Boca Chica area. But then some of the impacts, and Giovanna knows this, SpaceX has kind of a park and ride lot where the employees coming in, because not everybody can go into SpaceX. They don't have enough parking and the traffic congestion. They actually have a park and ride lot where they park and then they take a shuttle to get into SpaceX. So I think, they're doing a lot of work in that area, but I think now the containment of building Starbase is totally going to change, a lot of that, because it's much more controlled within the Starbase area, other than people coming from all over the region to go work into Starbase.
And one of the challenges we have in Midland is we've been dealing with the housing crisis for 10, 15 years now because of the oil and gas industry. But what's also happened with that is that, okay, we finally found a way to unplug, getting developers to come in and start to build homes. But what we didn't realize is that they were just going to build homes. So the quality of life component wasn't embraced. So there wasn't a multi-use path and things like that. That actually is another component to anyone who wants to move into a community, is what do you do after hours with your family? And so that was missing. And so that's one of the challenges we're dealing with today that will also just kind of extend into how do we recruit talent that want to come to Midland to be in the aerospace industry, when you need to have that quality of place to be inviting to have folks to want to raise a family there. And right now, Midland, Odessa, in many cases, folks go to work there, but they don't actually stay there. Their families are in other places. So that's a challenge we're dealing with already. And as we navigate those demands on housing, it's that balancing act. Yes, we need the homes, but we also need the green space so that folks can have things to do after hours as well.
Great. We've got just about 2 minutes left, actually now 1 minute. Why don't we just go down the line? If you could give one suggestion to, in two cases, a community that was starting to face the same issues, or Caroline, we don't want to tell the other state DOTs what they should be doing, but given what you've all learned, what would be the one thing you'd say, hey, be sure you look at XYZ?
I say be sure that you have that line of communication with your stakeholders, with those educational partners, with your city, coming together and having that right plan, it's never really the right plan, but having something, I think it's key. Just have that communication open, because we're all learning about space. We're all learning about defense. And, maybe, as Carolyn said, there's going to be someone that knows more than others regarding the topic. And so five heads discuss more than one. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to be learn as we go. That's one. And then kind of the second one that Giovanna mentioned is communication, collaboration, the partnership that's going to be needed. We can't do this alone. Like I mentioned, some of these organizations, they help us actually to execute on what matters to them, helping us help them. So really the partnership, and at all levels, like we're sitting here, we're all public sector, but we got to work together because like I mentioned, they're coming and they're coming fast. And the more we can continue to be relentless in engagement, that's the only way we're going to know, but that's also how we're going to build those relationships, make sure they're stronger so we can work together. We have the playbooks. So I think that's really moving forward is like, yeah, there's so many variables in this area right now, and it's going to get more complex. And if we're not out there engaging them, they're going to trip over us, or we're going to trip over ourselves.
And both ladies mentioned it perfectly. At the end of the day, there's just too many needs, too many things coming at us at one time that we're not going to get them all. It's like somebody throwing 10 baseballs and you still have one glove. So the goal here is, again, going back to planning and strategizing and having a unified front. And I think that's been some of the challenges, is that we all have these needs, but we really need to come together. Okay, well, let's prioritize those needs. And some of these needs can be, sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes you can actually have common goals that would actually tackle various items. So if we could just come together with a collaboration and a plan and phase this out, like Caroline mentioned in the presentation, what 24 billion, 27 billion. Okay, we can't do that in 2027. So it's going to be spaced out. So we have to have a plan of action that we can all get behind. And again, as a unified front, be all in the same page that this is the direction we'll go together. And so each community needs to be working, basically shoulder to shoulder with TxDOT to get these things accomplished.
Fantastic. Well, one, outstanding presentations, outstanding comments, great questions. Please join me in thanking them. Very, very important topic, I think. Stay tuned for more developments, and I'll turn it back over to CTR.
Yeah. And we are going to go into a break. Thank you all for being here. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of effort for you to come all the way out here and share with us. We are going into a break. I'm going to leave this slide up. So if you want to come up and scan one of the QR codes and get in touch with us later, I'll leave this there. Let's come back at 3 o'clock and we're going to do our project innovation showcase. We're going to get started in 1 minute. Okay, we're going to get started. We're going to move into this final portion of the programming. So what we're going to do now is what we call the Innovation Showcase, where we like to take different projects or initiatives that are ongoing and take a look at state, regional, and local perspectives. So we've got a couple topics that we're going to go through. The first one is on digital delivery, and then we're also going to hear about the state's multimodal transportation plan. And then we'll close out with some innovations in transit, looking specifically at San Antonio. And so I'm going to hand it over first to Jacob Tambunga from TxDOT to talk about digital delivery.
Thank you very much. So I always like to do this before I start. Raise a hand who's heard of digital delivery before? All right. We're making progress, y'all. We're making progress. So I always like to do this, though, just to kind of go over a little bit. What are we doing with digital delivery? Why are we doing this, right? Really what it amounts to is the use of data, right? The use of data as we transfer it from our design into construction to asset management and maintenance and operations, right? That's really what we're trying to do. Digital delivery is that first part of it, that design to construction part, that we want to make sure that we have the data set up correctly in the way that it's usable as we go through that life cycle. When we first started looking at digital delivery, really wanted to figure out why we were doing this. We knew other states were doing this. Why should TxDOT do this? Really found some good reasons, benefits here. I'll just highlight a couple of these. Really, one of the best ones is more accurate designs, right? When we go out into the field, if you've ever been out in the field, sometimes if you're an inspector, you feel like the designer had no idea what was out in the field. And you're like, did they just guess at this? You know, it's very frustrating when you get out there because you're under a time crunch. You have live traffic, and you're trying to solve these problems that really should be solved in the office. So that's one of the benefits of this, is to really take that off of the people in the field, back to the construction or to the designers, and really have that accountability there. Really, the next one is clear design intent. That kind of partners the same. Like, what did we mean when we were doing design? Why did we do this? What was the intent of this? So really being able to see that more clearly, being able to see if things fit, really have a better design as we go through. And then just really like less change orders, better quantities. We've seen these on our pilots already. If you look at this picture on the right, though, what we're starting to notice is that, like I was saying a second ago, it's about data exchange. And we've been doing data exchange for a long time, just in a different format. There's data involved in every single plan sheet, and that data was given to someone out in the field to construct it, right? But then it stopped right there. We had as-built, and if you've ever seen an as-built, it kind of are just written on pieces of paper. Sometimes they were actually done, sometimes you're not sure. And then when we get it back around into the next planning phase, we really don't know what this all meant, right? So we really want to make it to where we can have this data that we have already in the department more accessible to people, right? So if you kind of look at this picture, there's these different buckets, if you will, that have this data that we're going to need to make these really good decisions. I really am not a fan of using these like hot topic words, but a digital twin is kind of what we're looking at doing, right? What that means for us is kind of the ability to dive into all of our systems and pull the information that we really want out of it. If I want to know on I-35 between San Marcos and New Braunfels, how many crashes have there been, where the utilities are, what the maintenance jobs have been on there, and what's the performance of that maintenance, I should be able to find that in one fell swoop. I shouldn't have to call this area office and hope that person that has that information is there, and then call MTD and hope someone's not on vacation, and all these different things that we really don't have the ability to get the information sometimes in the time we need it. So that's really what our long-term goal is connecting our systems to make more data-driven decisions. But we have to start somewhere, right? Digital delivery is a good spot for us to start. One of the things that we've started to do when we started to realize we were going to go down this path was work with our contractors. Contractors are a big part of our partnership. They do all of our building and stuff like that. We want to make sure that we include them in these conversations. So whenever we first started talking to them, and if you've ever been in a district office, they want all of our files. They want as much information as they can get so that they can get better bids out and they can have more information. For a long time, we were skeptical about giving it out. We didn't really want to give it out. Now we've kind of done an about face, and we're really ready to give this stuff out. We developed a 5-phase process for us to be able to get our models out to our contractors so that they can start being able to consume them, get ready for kind of the next steps that are coming, the models of legal deliverable that will eventually be in Texas all over, and really start to get the contractors, maybe the ones not even in AGC, used to seeing these as part of what they can use when they're putting their bids together and in construction. First phase, what we did is we just did a quality review, made sure that the quality out in the districts was good, which it was. We did, good job there. We felt like we were on the right path. We're in phase 2 right now. We're giving all of our models to the contractors for information only on all of our projects. But these files are just limited to basically the things that you would use in order to develop a plan set. A corridor file, alignment, and then existing terrain. That's it. In phase 3, it's when we really start to get to the things they want, which are 3D model break lines and surfaces, things they can plug into their machines, get a better idea of what we're trying to accomplish with this project, and then start to give us more bids, better bids, and then, we start to go to or model as a legal deliverable across the state of Texas. So that's one of the things that we've been trying to do is work with our contractors frequently. We have quarterly meetings with them to give input as to our priorities and things like that. And we know that that's a really big part of us being successful. Now, in order for us to continue to make progress as well, we have to try something, right? I'm a big proponent of we can theorize all day, but we won't learn anything until we actually go try it. And if we try it and it doesn't work, how do we adapt for the next round? So we've developed a pilot project program for us to go and try these methodologies that we've developed, how to deliver these models to contractors with no paper, with very few PDFs, right? Where a lot of the information is embedded in the model because they're very data rich. They have metadata associated with it that we can use further downstream. So we led our first pilot project, in case y'all aren't aware, in 2025 in San Antonio. It was a really small 0.3 of a mile, full depth reconstruction, widening shoulders, something that most people wouldn't even look twice at. It's very straightforward. What we did on this was we didn't deliver any traditional plan sets with it. We delivered models, we delivered roll plots, and learned a lot from that experience with the contractor that won it out in San Antonio. Well, after that, we had several pilot projects. I think it was about 8 of them. And then, but they stretched all the way to 2032, I think is what it was. Well, in conversations with admin, they helped us to realize that we needed to push forward a little bit quicker. So at one of our senior leadership meetings, Mark Williams decided that we're all going to do pilot projects across the state. All 25 districts are going to have one that let by the end of calendar year 27. So we went from 8 that got to 32 to now we have about 34 pilot projects. Most of those lighting in the next, year and a half, something like that. Not very long. So now we're fast forward on everything that we're doing. We have 3 that are letting in calendar year 26, 23 that are letting in 27. So a whole bunch coming down the pipe here pretty quick. One of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that we continue to work with these districts to make sure that we are a resource for them. Make sure that we are continuing to guide them and help them through these processes. Not only are we doing these pilot projects just for the sake of learning, we also want to start setting up our next steps, right? And so one of the next steps that we have is more complex jobs, right? A lot of the ones that we picked for these, I guess it's 26 that are letting before 27 are like standard bridges or widenings, things like that that are pretty straightforward that we really wouldn't look too hard at if it wasn't for the delivery method. On the next round, starting in 28, we're going to start finding more complex jobs. So trying to see what those complexities are, probably something with retaining walls, maybe storm drain, maybe intersections, things like that. And then we're also going to start with a statewide type of project going digital delivery across the state, right? So potentially a widening of some sort. If there's earthwork involved in it, we know that earthwork is a big benefit of us going digital delivery. Maybe the the widenings with earthwork jobs or something like that are going to be all statewide by 2028. That's something we're still vetting out that criteria, but that is the goal that we have. For every pilot project, we do have distinct goals that we're trying to meet on every one of our pilots. If you'll notice on all these, and I won't read all these out, but one of the ones that is very, very important is the last one on each list, and it's standardization. Standardization is the key for us to continue to move forward with data that can go between systems. For, say, a system to be able to read between APIs and things like that and get the right information. Just an example of that is if I tried to query on the same example earlier, I-35 between San Marcos and New Braunfels. If someone entered I-35, that wouldn't hit. IH-35, that wouldn't hit. IH-35, that wouldn't hit. Right? So I'm not getting all that information that I need to make that decision. So when we standardize things across the state, we have the ability to really get all the information and all the data that we need to make these decisions. Now, as you can imagine, this is a very, very big undertaking that we're trying to do. And one of the biggest things in a big undertaking is the management of that change. Change management is absolutely one of the cores of what we're trying to do here. In fact, I'll say that this is more of a change management exercise than an engineering exercise because we're doing engineering the same way. We're just changing things, like especially our delivery method. So we've been very methodical with the way that we try to manage this change. And one of the things we wanted to make sure we did, beyond talking to AGC on a quarterly basis, we wanted to make sure that our districts were involved. So we developed a work group that has 8 of our districts in there. It has, I think, 15 of our divisions in there. And the goal of this is to make sure that everybody that is involved in the project development process has input into what we're doing. Along with the pilots, the input from the work groups is really, really important for us to make sure that we come up with processes that work, but that are standard across the districts. We don't want it to be to where San Angelo district has it one way and Austin has it another way. We know that there's some of that has to happen, but the base of what we do should be standardized. I like to think of it as there's an umbrella of standardization that we have, and we have to abide by that. And then the little things underneath that are probably okay for us to be district specific. So in 2024, we decided to visit all 25 districts. If you've ever driven to all of our districts, it's a big undertaking. We did it from April to August, and we had several teams going out there, and it was a day-long thing. So we did presentations on how this would affect design, construction, asset management, and maintenance. Talked about our pilot projects, and then got feedback from them. At that point in time, most people didn't really know what we were talking about. It was still very, very new. So we got a lot of great questions, but it was more like theoretical questions. Like, I don't know how this would work. How would this work? Now that we've all got into this a little bit more, we're going to go back this summer and get some more input from them. Get some more input to see how things are working. What do they like? What do they find challenging? Because that's going to be how we continue to progress this program, is making sure we get that input from the people that are actually doing the work. We also have AGC meetings, like I mentioned, ACEC meetings, meetings like this, where I can talk to people that maybe don't have constant interaction with us and things like that. Really trying to get the word out there as to what we're doing as a department so that we can make sure that we talk to the right people, have the right stakeholder involvement, things like that. Shameless plug for our website. If you guys ever want to go see what we're doing, all of it's on that website. We're making everything public. We're not putting anything just internal. We think that this needs to be transparent. We want to make sure that everyone sees what we're doing. Also, it's an opportunity for us to collaborate with folks, other DOTs, other agencies, things like that that are looking the same direction. Easiest way to find us, Google TxDOT digital delivery. It'll be the first thing that comes up. On that website, at the very bottom, there's a place you can enter in your email address. This is how you can stay connected to the things that we're doing. We send out newsletters. We do webinars and things like that to make sure that everybody that wants to know what we're doing is involved in it. And so we sent this quarterly newsletter will be sent out. I think we're approving it this week, so it should be out here in the next week or so. So if you're interested, I would say let's get subscribed to that pretty soon. Now, I think one of the biggest parts of change management is training. I think that is really what will define our success or our shortcomings in this. Because I think that whenever we do training, we're training people and teaching them how to do their jobs in this new way. So we have several different paths for training. survey, design, even the letting part. We're going to have to train people up, construction, asset management, and others, right? And I say others because there's going to be things that as we go down this path, we're going to realize we need a training video for that, or we need a training course for that. I'm a big proponent of, any of y'all, I'm sure everybody uses YouTube for something, but you go and you have about a 2 or 3 minute video to tell you how you do this, how you do this. We're going to have a database of that, a bank of those for every little thing that we do, because I think that's how people learn. But we're trying to meet people where they learn. If a formal class is what you want, we have that. If you want these little videos, we have that. If you want to read a manual, we'll have that. We want to try to meet people where they learn because we know that people learn different. And so really trying to do this to make sure that we're successful. We set up our districts and our partners up for success. And I think sharing this information will be very important. Like I mentioned, even these trainings are going to be available publicly. We have a page already right now that's a couple of them on there. They will have the manual out there. They will have a video recording of the training, and then each one of the chapters is broken down in the videos. Again, another shameless plug for our website. I like to get traffic to there. If you have questions, you can reach out to digital-delivery at TxDOT.gov, or you can reach out to me directly. I am happy to talk about this. This is what I'm very passionate about. I've been doing this for the past, 8 years, working to where we're at now. So with that, I guess if we have time, I will take questions.
Good afternoon, Jacob. So this is Benjamin King with STR. One quick question. Do you have any lessons learned from the San Antonio project that you would like to share with the audience today?
Absolutely. One lesson that we learned was do not put too much information on your roll plot because they'll use that for construction. They'll use that for bidding. We didn't get to use our models as much as we wanted to because there was enough information on those roll plots for them to bid on, for them to construct on, for them to inspect with. So that is a huge lesson learned. Even though we are going to provide roll plots for our contractors, it's not going to have all the information that they can use for those purposes, for bidding or building or things like that. That's a great question. And that was one of the things that whenever we saw that, it was like, oh, missed opportunity, because we should have known that if we gave them that they would use it. But I guess you live and you learn, right? What other questions do y'all have? There we go. I knew Darren would have a question.
So at what point do you all project that digital delivery will become the standard for all projects?
So you're going to get me in trouble with that question, Darren. You're in trouble with that question. I think it's hard to answer that because we don't know enough yet, right? So we've had one successful pilot, and as I just mentioned, it wasn't completely constructed the way that we hoped it would be. So after we go through this round of pilots, I think we'll have a better kind of grasp on the industry's appetite for this. Are we able to help them along with training, or is it something we're going to continue to have a back and forth with, right? And so I think I don't want to give an answer as far as that goes because I don't know the answer to that yet. But as we learn more, things will become more and more clear.
And have you guys established a repository for the digital products? Are we?
So yes, right now we're utilizing ProjectWise for our design stuff. Now, as we move forward, we are looking at where our as-built are, and no one asked us, but I'll kind of give this information. We're still working on what our as-built look like, right? Because is it a model? Is it a LiDAR scan? Is it a combination of both? We're still looking at that because if you scan with LiDAR, you don't have that metadata that you put into the model, right? And there's data loss there. That's something we're trying to avoid. So trying to figure out what that looks like still, and then where they're going to go. Where are they going to live?
Okay, and so you mentioned a digital twin on your slide. So I'm going to ask you the question of, so is this a process coming out of a digital twin, or is this a process that feeds to and builds a digital twin, or both, right? Because the digital twin is the data base, and then you're talking about digital delivery, which are processes.
So I think it's both. I think it feeds it, and it creates it at the same time. So the way I see this is the digital twin may or may not be the database. It may be that there are established systems already in place, like TxDOT Connect, MMS, APCM, ProjectWise, things like that. And the digital twin can go into those and grab the information that we need in its native environment, and then be able to push it out as a query of some sort saying, I've looked at these different areas. This is the information I have found based on the question you asked. That's kind of the way that we're looking at right now. Now, things as we dive into it could change, but I think that's kind of what we've talked about. I think that's kind of the way we're looking at it. Is we don't want to redefine too many things as far as we don't want to tell maintenance, you can't use MMS anymore. We want to say, how can we plug into MMS and get that information in a standardized way for us to be able to get that information that we want.
Okay, so they already asked what I was going to ask, but I did think, so what about comprehension? So you mentioned when you went out and said digital twin, nobody really understood it, right? They didn't fully get it. I even had a supervisor once ask me, what is a digital twin? What does this even mean? And when I figured it out and learned, it made a big difference for me, right? Eye-opening. But how do you assess that comprehension in the districts to understand, do they really get it? Do they know where we're going with this?
So I think the communication is the important part, right? So just from a first kind of take at this, we made a very simplistic video on our website to explain what digital delivery was and why it was important for the department. Then we go and we talk about it, and we keep that same message. So I think messaging is important. Consistent messaging is the most important, right? So as we start to explore what a digital twin and stuff like that looks like, there'll be a very similar path to that, to where we have different ways that people learn, message is consistent throughout, so that if I say it or Erica says it or anyone says it, it's the same message that we have out there. And that's how you kind of get that buy-in and maybe that understanding a little bit better.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A lot of the participants are local and regional agencies, so IOs, but like a city or a county, for example. In your experience in y'all's transition, how's the barrier to entry in terms of like resource needs, technical needs? Is this something that really state DOTs are only in a position to do right now, or could a city or a county make this transition also?
So it's a great question. And the real answer is I don't know, because it depends. And that's always the answer, right? It depends. What I will say is, like, what we're looking at doing right now with the technical, the technology investment that we're making and stuff like that can be a little bit higher. But I think there's also things coming down the pipe like IFC. So IFC is Industry Foundation Classes, which is an open data standard that most of these major these vendors are programming to. So what that means is, if I do something in Autodesk, I can send it to Trimble or Bentley or something like that, and all that metadata goes along with it. Reason I'm saying this is because eventually what will happen is most, if not all, of these major civil applications will incorporate this, and then you don't have to go with a specific vendor. You can go with whatever and then export that out, and that will make this transition a little bit easier. We're fumbling through it right now because that isn't exactly ready yet. So once that becomes more mature, that'll make things a lot easier. Margaret time.
Yeah, thank you. Hustle over here.
Jacob, I came in a little bit late. I don't know if you talked about it. You talked about training, and you're talking about industry and change management. How are we selling AGC?
So we do have meetings with AGC, and one of the things that we're talking to them about is one of the reasons we do this is more accurate design, right? More accurate representation of what's out in the field. And so that helps them to be able to know more readily what's expected of them, right? So the way that we can look at it is, We give them all this data, all this information. They have more time to digest it because it's in a viewable format. It can be ingested into their applications. They don't have to spend time. Say it's an I-35 job and there's 7,000 pages that they have to go through in 21 days. That's not feasible. So it helps them to get their best bids out, to better understand what we're looking at from the job perspective. But then we're giving them information to help them with their takeoffs. We're going to give them metadata to say, this is the, if you click on this line, it'll have our item type, our bid code. It'll have the quantities. It'll have all those things in there. So I think as we start to move further down this and they start to see it more, they'll see advantages of it. They already do. It's just to what extent right now, right? So that's part of this process of going through with pilot projects and learning in partnership to make sure that we hear what they're saying and we continue to push the things that we need and incorporate the input that we get from our partners. I think that's all the time I have. Thank you all very much.
Yes. Thank you very much. And we'll continue to follow this and share information kind of as needed and as it becomes available. It seems like there's quite a bit of interest. We're going to roll right into the next presentation. We've got Theo Kossab from the TxDOT who's going to come share on the statewide multimodal transportation plan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Theo Kossab here. I'm excited to share the statewide multimodal transit plan with you all today. It's certainly been a rewarding and challenging project at the same time. So first, I wanted to just show you where this people movement plan fits in with our overall hierarchy here. It is nestled in with our statewide active transportation plan. Both of these plans were done along the same timeline. And as you can see, we have quite a few plans. So why did we decide to do the statewide multimodal transit plan? Well, Texas is growing astronomically, as we can all see out on the roads. We're looking at a 40% increase in population statewide, a massive increase in employment from 2020 through 2050. We did hear that 86% of respondents said it's important to improve public transit within the state. Transit supports economic growth and opportunity. It provides connections and creates connections and provides mobility. Here's just a look at the state. It's really that Texas Triangle mega region, just huge exponential growth. One caveat, as that area urbanizes, there are still large areas of the state that remain rural, and demand for transit will only increase there. So, more cars, more people. We've had about 172% increase in registered vehicles in the last 4 decades, and the cost of congestion and delay is starting to add up. So one of the things we wanted to do is look at some mobility and multimodal options. Our transit system today is not all buses. We do have 77 transit districts or authorities. In 2025, about 234 million passengers were carried over about 273 million miles of service. We have 5 intercity bus companies. We do have 2 TxDOT operated ferry systems. And we do have some intercity passenger rail, 3 Amtrak lines. Here's kind of a breakdown of our transit agencies. Within PTN, we work primarily with our rural and urban transit districts. But something that we did this time in developing this plan was to really engage the metropolitan transit authorities. We don't have a funding relationship, but we wanted to get a hold of them and incorporate them in our plan so we had that total picture that's going on throughout the state. I'll talk a little bit about what we did for stakeholder and public involvement. It's an integrated planning effort. This is the planning table on which the SMTP resides. You have all sorts of partners that each play a role. This plan has been a long time coming. We started it back in 2023. We had some emphasis area working groups that I'll mention later, but we did do 4 rounds of outreach, pretty substantial outreach for this plan. We finished it off substantively in 2025, and we went through some review in early 2026, but I'm anticipating we'll be posting the finalized plan to our website soon. Here's a look at the outreach. So as you can see, we did go throughout the state, hit up all of our districts. I put a lot of miles on the state vehicles. We had about 4,000 survey results that listed the top challenges, transit needs, potential strategies, and what folks would like to see as initial implementation steps. We did hit over 100,000 Texans. We rolled over that number with our last round of outreach in fall of 2025. Excuse me. Here's a look at who we engaged. So we had a couple of emphasis area working groups tailored to specific topics. We did have 25 folks join those and participate in consecutive meetings. We did also engage industry professionals. Of course, we reached out to our metropolitan planning partners and several economic development groups. We did have a formal steering committee for the SMTP, had 5 meetings with them. We had about 10,000 stakeholders that we maintained through an informational list to give them updates about the plan. Our contributors are varied, but providing multimodal options and quality transit is quite substantial. So everywhere from transit operators to local municipalities, MPOs, of course, all of our divisions and districts. And then within PTN, we do have a public transportation advisory committee. So they were engaged as well. So what did we hear when we were out there talking about the plan and doing these surveys? Well, we heard that service and connectivity were quite important. How do you get from town to town using transit? Or really, how do you make a complete trip from a rural area into an urban area, then maybe into a metro area? We also heard that the improvement of facilities and physical assets was quite important. Waiting areas, something as simple as, having Wi-Fi or scheduling that's properly displayed, very important. No surprise here, funding and resources were often a challenge. Particularly in our rural areas, adequate funding and workforce needs quite important. So what about building the actual plan? So here's our vision. I won't read it to you, but we think that this reflects a pretty good vision for a plan that's long range and goes through 2050. We have a couple of, there are 6 goals for the statewide multimodal transit plan, and these actually align with the state long-range transportation plan. Connectivity is a huge one. Safety and security. We're always looking at mission zero, and that is for transit use as well. Asset preservation, maintaining a state of good repair, not just for those assets that are operating out every day, putting in service, but also the facilities. We heard consistently that that's a challenge, and riders actually are interested in that as well. So how did we get to, what I'm going to show you in a little bit is some of the initial actions that we're going to undertake and are already undertaking with the statewide multimodal transit plan. We gathered feedback from our working groups and our stakeholders from a list of about 250 potential strategies. We narrowed those down and we aligned those with our goals, gaps, and challenges that we identified earlier. And after we did that, we said, all right, well, here's a couple of potential actions that we can take right away and get started on. So I won't read through this structure here, but if you're interested in the meat of this plan, this is really where you would find a topic and you could learn more about what specific challenges, gaps, or needs were identified. And they are subsequently mapped over to a strategy that helps to address that. So, for instance, under urban and rural area transit services, we have our general mobility networks, but we've taken, one of the strategies is to identify those priority corridors between those areas and estimate what kind of minimum service levels would be needed. Intercity connectivity is another huge one. I mentioned a complete trip that you might be able to take from a rural area. Some of that includes potentially rail. We did hear a lot of interest in rail when we were out in the field. And I've got the initial priority steps over here on the right, but I'll go through those in just a minute. So let's take a look at the needs, gaps, and challenges. I think the urban and rural area services, we've got the growing urban areas, but the rurals are losing a little bit of population, and that's probably going to continue in the future. We've heard that workforce retention is quite a challenge for our rural providers. You have a lot of competition from the oil field, from larger systems that may siphon off some of those workers. So that's an example of a specific chapter, some of the challenges, needs, and gaps. I talked about identifying those priority corridors and estimating minimum service levels, but part of this plan is also integrating all transit modes, whether that's on-demand transit service, whether that's demand response, whether that's traditional, fixed route service, first last mile connections, integrating with other modes such as active modes, walking, biking, pedestrian. And another strategy is to establish and maintain those institutional partnerships that might help do something like promote comprehensive workforce development. So let's talk about some of those initial priority steps, some of which are innovative. So one thing that we've already undertaken is to establish a community of practice to address small urban and rural transit challenges. We are going to call that the Transit Peer Exchange. One thing we heard is that there are a lot of challenges facing, in particular, the rural systems. Shared procurement, retaining the workforce, some of the reporting requirement challenges from NTD and within the FTA. So we've just we're kicking that off. We have our semi-annual transit operators meeting coming up in May, and we're working with our partner, TTI, to develop a presentation to talk about the community of practice, now known as Transit Peer Exchange. Another project that we're looking to start pretty soon here is to develop that statewide transit network and hub plan, provide a map for the future that integrates not only the routes, but provides identification of key hubs that might be used to link urban to rural transit systems. I'll highlight another one here, develop success metrics, enhance and broaden data collection. So often you have traditional measures of service efficiency that large systems use. How many passengers are you serving per hour? What's your cost per hour? What are the revenue mile? What kind of ridership do you have for that? But in rural areas in particular, those don't always work. So you might want to see, what's the community's perception of that transit in the area? What kind of value is it providing? Are you providing access to economic opportunity, jobs, healthcare? So we're looking at metrics that can paint the story and show the value that transit provides, particularly in rural areas. And that gets into the last one at the bottom right. So the benefits of transit are not just about who it serves and where they're going, but it truly is an engine for economic growth and getting people to their places of employment. So we want to highlight those stories and continue to put those out so the public can see, what kind of investment they're getting from these dollars that are coming not only from the state, but also federal. And then lastly, this one will not surprise you. We're looking at options to increase the flexibility of our existing funding sources and to find new funding sources that may help maintain and expand transit, because those are really two things, right? Maintaining your system, there's been a lot of inflationary pressure, not only on the cost per hour of service, but also those transit vehicles. In some cases, procuring those assets for transit districts has almost doubled within the last 10 years. And so you've got to maintain what you have in your state of good repair. But if you want to expand and offer more coverage or span of service, well, then you've got to find some dedicated funding for that. So we went out there with the plan in fall 2025, our draft plan. We did public meetings in 7 cities. We also had a virtual public meeting. We did receive some positive media coverage, mostly positive, in fact. We also, some of the coverage was from related to rail, which can be a hot topic, really. And when we talk about rail in terms of this plan, it's not necessarily just the high-speed rail or Hyperloop. No, it could be improvements to regular rail to increase the speed or straighten some of those lines. So when we went out with the plan, we got almost 1,100 surveys completed for that draft plan, about 800 public comments, overwhelmingly positive. We did have members of the public and stakeholders rank our initial priority steps. And I guess a little bit of a surprise to me, we found that over half thought developing a statewide network and hub plan was their top priority. And, that may be related to, frankly, how congested and how busy the Texas Triangle has become. Other top themes, expanded transit service, integration of transit modes, high-speed rail was popular, and intercity connectivity. And that is it. I expect the plan will be posted soon, so I'm happy to field any questions you all may have.
On one of the slides you showed under 2 of the efforts, desires for technology, and since we spent a lot of time on trying to identify emerging technology needs, can you kind of expand on what are they asking for?
So Darren, under technology, a couple of needs. One is related to universal trip planning. That's a big one for them. There's been an effort to engage in GTFS at a transit district level, and actually there's a NTD standard for that, but where to house that repository and how to use that GTFS data. And there's also GTFS Flex, which would capture something like on-demand service. What else in technology? Even something basic like, hey, give us some real-time scheduling information at our transit facilities and give us access to Wi-Fi. There is a varying capability, particularly in the rural transit districts, of the transit workforce there. And often you might have someone who's doing 3 jobs. They're doing dispatch, they're doing scheduling, and they're doing NTD reporting. So they are looking, for solutions that can simplify that, because there are many types of software available, and we are not prescriptive as a state about what you can use. But I would say often a repository or a universal trip planning app rose to the top.
We're going to move on to the next presentation. Thank you. I think this next presentation will line up with where you're leaving off. So we're going to bring up Brian Dillard from San Antonio's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and he's going to talk about some of the innovations going on in San Antonio. I think continue some of the conversation around the themes that we just left off on with Theo.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. Wrong way? Right way? Wrong way. Oh, got it. There we go. Awesome. So yeah, I'm Brian Dillard. I'm the Vice President of Innovation and Technology at VIA. I've been at VIA for 2 years, so I'm still a little bit of a newbie. I did come from the city of San Antonio. I was Chief Innovation Officer there for several years. So yeah, today I'm going to walk us through how we're approaching innovation through our Keep San Antonio Moving program with VIA. It's not just a set of projects, but it is a shift in how we deliver mobility in a growing region. So the biggest change we've made isn't what we're building, it's how we think about delivery. Historically, like many agencies, we leaned heavily on long-range planning. Projects took time and success was measured by completion. What KSAM introduced was a shift toward outcomes, faster implementation, and a focus on what the customer actually experiences when they're on our system. And today we're prioritizing frequency, reliability, and access, and delivering those improvements much faster than we have in the past. So there we go. So San Antonio is, as you know, one of the fastest growing cities in the country. With that growth comes increased congestion, but not necessarily proportional expansion in infrastructure. On top of that, transit has historically been underfunded compared to peer cities, and our fixed route system didn't always align with how people actually move today. So the challenge wasn't that the system was broken, it was that it wasn't keeping up. What KSAM does is and I'll note this, KSAM is a voter-approved mandate with 68% support, and it's funded through a dedicated sales tax, which gives us the ability to think long-term about these items. More importantly, it was built from what community told us they needed: more frequent service, better access, and shorter travel times. And we structured it intentionally as a portfolio of investments, not a single solution, because no one mode solves every problem. So what does that look like in practice? We're really innovating across 3 layers here. First is service. Through our Better Bus program, we've shifted to a frequency-first model and dramatically accelerated implementation timelines. Second is infrastructure. Through VIA Rapid Transit, our advanced rapid transit corridor, dedicated lane, signal priority, high-frequency service, we are now delivering rail-like performance, or we will be in 2028, but with more flexibility and lower cost. A third is flexible mobility through VIA Link, our on-demand microtransit that allows us to serve lower density areas more effectively instead of forcing a fixed route 40-foot bus where it doesn't fit. The key idea here is simple. Different corridors require different solutions, and now we actually operate that way. And we are seeing results. In 2025, we delivered 31.6 million passenger trips. Today, about 72% of our service operates at 30 minutes or better, which is an incredible increase over where we were before. We're ranked #1 in customer satisfaction in U.S. Transit, and our VIA Link service is sitting at a 4.85 star rating. What's important here is that these metrics are moving together: ridership, satisfaction, and service levels. That's how we know we're not just improving one part of the system, we're improving the whole experience. Now, underneath all of this is technology. We've invested heavily in real-time data and system visibility, both for operations and for the customer. On the customer side, that means better real-time information and communication throughout the journey. On the operations side, it allows us to manage the system dynamically, not statically, adjusting based on real conditions instead of fixed assumptions. Technology isn't a solution by itself, but it's what makes everything work better for us and our customers. One of the less visible but most important pieces of this program is data governance. We're building an enterprise-wide framework to standardize how data is defined, owned, and used. That includes creating consistency across systems, establishing accountability, and enabling better cross-functional decision-making. Ultimately, the goal is a single source of truth for operations and planning. Because if the data isn't trusted, the decisions won't be either. We're treating data like infrastructure because it's just as critical. On top of that foundation, we're beginning to integrate AI into our operations. We're exploring use cases across customer service, internal workflows, and operational decision-making. But we're doing it intentionally with a strong focus on governance, transparency, and responsible use. And importantly, this isn't about replacing staff, it's about equipping them. Because if we don't give our workforce access to these tools, we're asking them to do tomorrow's job with yesterday's tools. So when we talk about Keep San Antonio Moving, we're not just talking about transit projects. We're talking about building a system that delivers faster, more reliable service, offers flexible mobility options, and is supported by strong data, technology, and governance. Ultimately, it's about building a system that can adapt to the customer, the corridor, and the future. Appreciate the time today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I was interested in the I think it was micro trips.
Yeah, microtransit.
Microtransit. So how much is a fare, I guess, for somebody else?
Same as our bus route, $1.30. Yeah.
Really?
You've kept it the same price across the entire service.
And then what is there anything comparable that you know of in the Austin area? Is it carts potentially that would be our?
No, well, I don't. What is carts?
Okay, it's our. Is Theo still here? Yeah. There's Theo. There's our PTN guy. Yeah.
So they use the on-demand service. Carts is doing some innovative on-demand. I think it's called Carts on Demand on their app, and they've used that in areas like Hutto, Bastrop, Marble Falls. So it's out there, but they don't have a lot of frequency that comes into the East Side Bus Plaza, unfortunately, and they're the rural provider. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
Actually, so we currently have 7 zones. We're about to build our 8th zone in August, but it is transit on demand. That's exactly what it is. And we have these vans that go around, and you plug them in on your app, and they connect you wherever you need to go within the zone.
And then are you also offering the service to businesses or corporations in the area?
100%, just like we would with our fixed route service.
That's very cool. All right, thanks.
Cat Metro has an on-demand service. It's called Pickup. So that's their version of microtransit.
Nobody asked about Cat Metro. No, I'm kidding.
All right, Brian, great presentation as always. Well, I was going to ask a funding question to Theo, but we let him go easy. But a bit more of a loaded question. I can ask you a cybersecurity question. That'll be too easy for you. So in terms of the smart city alignment thoughts, right? And you did a great job leading the city's smart program earlier. So with that backdrop, do you want to talk a little bit about the technology stack you're thinking for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the data. So we have a Smart SA partnership that is includes about 9 or 10 partners now, including the City of San Antonio, and Art Reinhardt was on earlier. City of San Antonio, our water service system, as well as CPS Energy. And the biggest piece of that is our interlocal data sharing agreement that we signed in 2018. We have been utilizing that incredibly, and I think it was Jacob that mentioned about data standardization and making sure that those data standards are across the board. That's tough to do across agencies, but and that's why I said accountability when it comes to the data piece. It's holding ourselves accountable, but also holding our partners accountable. So we're still at a very kind of foundational level with that, but I think everybody is at this point. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, thank you. Y'all ready to get to happy hour, huh?
Any final questions? Oh, other one. Okay.
Hi, you talked about data governance. Are you using the NIST risk management framework to create your policies then?
Yes, it is one of our guiding principles, but we're kind of doing a mishmash of a lot of different things when it comes to data governance. NIST was it wasn't as agile as we wanted it to be. I need to make sure that our framework is adaptable and dynamic, almost kind of a living document. I know there needs to be some structure there, but I also need some flexibility for the needs of operations, because if I just send them, this is your rules, follow them, they're just going to not tell me when they break the rules. So I want to make sure that we're having that back and forth. But yes, the NIST framework is our backbone.
And I guess as government, are you under the Texas AI law, TRIGA? Are you considered government for that? Okay, sorry.
All right. And if you have any other questions that you didn't get to ask, we've got, hopefully Theo and Brian will be around for a few minutes as we are closing out, and you can catch them before they leave. And with that, I think we're going to move into just the closing portion. So we like to hear from our partners at TxDOT. We've got Darren, Erica, Ben up here. Anything y'all want to add before we close out today? Any takeaways or closing remarks? And then I'll close out with 1 or 2 slides just to share with y'all.
I just have a few notes here, so I feel like there's people behind me. Edward talked about EDC8, and EDC8 is going to be really important. Like literally the newsletter came out and announced them, and Mark Williams sent Darren a message and said, "Are we all over this?" And it was like, well, they just came out like 5 minutes ago. The great news is we actually are sort of all over them. So Jacob is here talking about digital delivery. Edward mentioned that we're looking to help champion the Sioux part of it. And I'm actually a champion on the connected corridors portion. So I'll be pushing everybody about data and what we're all doing with data, not just at TxDOT, but what our local agencies are doing with data to get ready. So get ready. So we're real excited about that. We are going to incorporate it into the Innovation Alliance moving forward and sharing those innovations. And then we'll be able to share too the national innovations, right? Because it's a national program. It's not just a Texas program. The asphalt to orbit, just changing gears here, the asphalt to orbit conversation, I think one of the biggest takeaways I took is that it's really about the supply chain asphalt to asphalt, right? How do we get things to the bases where they're going to be sending things into orbit, and are we ready for that? And that was a pretty big price tag just on the TxDOT side, right? That was just TxDOT getting ready. And so when we start thinking about Brownsville and Midland and Houston and other areas, and I just share with you this little anecdotal, doesn't have to do with orbit, but it is going to be an issue because I was following behind some of the turbines for the wind turbines, the arms that go around on trucks, not actually like when they were spinning. They were on the trucks headed towards where they were going to build them. And we came up on a clover leaf, right? So they could change highways. And the first one went around just fine. And the second one went around and got stuck, right? Because he was too long to get through the clover leaf. Well, guess where I was sitting? In the clover leaf, like 3 cars behind the truck that now cannot move. And so that was a real interesting, how we were all going to get out of the clover leaf and move on and get back where we needed to go. And then how were they going to get that truck out of there? So there's a lot of things to think about as we're moving this supply chain, especially with the oversized, overweight equipment that's necessary that we're going to have to get to the bases. And then I love the whole leveraging the momentum and the concentration of the aerospace industry here in Texas so that Texas can lead. Switching some more gears onto the projects that we were talking about, digital delivery is a hot button. I'll just share with you. We meet every week on it. So like Jacob said, he's been working on this for 8 years and he's finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But now comes all the gaps that are going to be identified that he and his teams are going to need to fill. So we're real excited for that. And then what I really liked here, having Theo talking about the statewide multimodal transportation plan and having Brian talking about what VIA is doing is that they are connected, right? We now have a plan and we have an innovation example that supports the plan. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Let me thank all of the presenters today. They did a fabulous job. And let me thank all of the participants. Like I said, I think at T3F, please bring a friend, right, to the next one, or 2 or 3, so that we're sharing more innovations. And then those people can share with us their innovations as we move forward. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you, Erica. We've got 2 slides to close out, and then we will let you all be on your way. I need to thank my staff and STR for all the work they did to put this together.
and CTR for all the work they did to help us as well. So my apologies. You were not an afterthought. You were just not in my notes.
Thank you. Okay, closing out with some announcements. So you've probably heard us talk about this already today, the Texas Innovation Invitational. This is our annual convening of the Texas Innovation Alliance. This has grown year over year. I think last year was 400 people. We are going to be in Allen, Texas this year, June 15th through the 17th. We like to get some of the technology vendors to come out. They show us the technology. You can talk to the people who are developing them. Then we've got a full day of programming that happens on day 2 with some leadership roundtables and discussions. We've also got some breakout sessions where you can have a little bit more candid and technical conversations. And then we've got our teams that come in and they have a showcase where they talk about an innovation project that they would like to advance. And there is some stick incentive funding that has been available in the past. One of the other things we want to share is, I think this was started last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Industry Innovator of the Year Award is something that went out. So we are asking for y'all to help nominate people so that we can select our winner and announce that at the invitational coming up. And the QR code there is where you can find information on how to do that. Other upcoming events, so we do have monthly deep dive conversations that we have. These are virtual, so if you can't make it in person, we encourage you to attend these. The one that we have coming up in May is looking at some innovations in freight. There's a warehouse study that Team Houston will be presenting on, as well as a truck parking study and some innovations in freight in the San Antonio area that'll be presented. And then on the June meeting, we like to reserve this one for a conversation about how to engage and give you a preview of programming and what's going to happen at the invitational. So those are the upcoming deep dives. And just another plug again, we really do want your feedback. We want to know what topics are important to you. We want to know what you're up to in your region. So please let us know and we'll figure out a way to talk with you and learn more about what you're up to or what it is you want to share with us. And that is it. That's all we have planned for today. I think 3 minutes over.